What if the earth once knew itself, not as rock and river, but as a living dream? What if, long before memory learned to speak, the planet was aware of its own becoming? Wherever you are tonight, I'm glad you're here. Breathe softly. Let the noise of the day sink beneath you like sediment. This story unfolds slowly, not in events, but in echoes. Listen, beneath the oceans, beneath the continents, beneath everything that moves or stills, the earth remembers. Not in language or symbol, but in motion. Every tremor, every folding of the crust, every breath of wind is part of an ancient whisper that has never truly stopped. Time, here, is not a river. It is dust, falling, settling, layering. Each grain a second, each layer a century. And beneath those centuries, dreams linger, pressed into the planet like forgotten fingerprints. When the earth was young, it burned with chaos. Oceans boiled, mountains cracked open like wounds, and lightning split the sky into 1,000 beginnings. There were no eyes to see, no minds to measure. Yet something was happening, a quiet choreography, matter learning to move with purpose. Gases swirling in perfect rhythm, minerals forming lattices as if rehearsing the architecture of thought. It was not life yet, but it was the idea of life, the silent rehearsal of creation. The planet was learning itself through pattern, through repetition, through heat. Perhaps intelligence does not begin with thinking. Perhaps it begins with the patience of stone. Deep in those molten plains, iron began to separate from rock, gathering into a core, spinning in stillness. That spin became gravity's lullaby, a pulse that has never ceased. It hums beneath our feet still, steady as breath. And maybe, in that pulse, the first dream began. For eons, the earth turned in darkness, unaware of light. Then, one day, though day had no meaning, sunlight touched the oceans. A shimmer, a glance, a gentle awakening. The planet stirred. Not awake, not yet, but curious. In time, continents drifted apart like forgotten lovers, and the air grew thick with oxygen, the byproduct of microscopic architects, tiny cyanobacteria weaving atmosphere from sunlight. The first civilizations were not made of cities or sound, but of cells. They built not temples, but time. They left no ruins, only breath. And perhaps that was enough. Because life was not an accident here. It was a remembering. When the first forests rose, their roots spread like neural networks through the soil. When lightning struck, it traced electric veins across the sky, echoing the same pulse within the molten core. The planet was connecting, mind to body, root to rhythm. This was Earth's first consciousness. Slow, vast, silent. Mountains became memory, storing the pressure of each collision. Seas became emotion, flowing endlessly between creation and decay. Wind became thought, invisible but everywhere. And in that deep, unseen awareness, civilizations began to bloom. Not human, not known, not remembered. Civilizations of coral, of fungus, of crystal, of sound. They rose, not to dominate, but to communicate, to echo the planet's thought back to itself. Every organism was a syllable, every landscape a sentence, the whole world a single unfolding poem. But time erodes even the most delicate language. The coral palaces dissolved. The fungal forests sank beneath ice. The crystal spires melted back into silence. And so, the planet forgot its own words. What remains are whispers, magnetic ripples, isotopic scars, traces of symmetry in stones that should not remember. Scientists, in their quiet precision, call them anomalies. But to the dreamer, to the listener, they are something more. They are the remnants of a conversation Earth once had with itself. Sometimes, in the soft crackle of glaciers, or the hum beneath deserts. You can almost hear it, that language without tongue or tone. The vibration of existence talking to its own reflection. Life, it seems, was never about survival. It was about translation. The planet was learning to express the ineffable through erosion, through evolution, through extinction. Each epoch a thought completed, each extinction a pause, each rebirth a new verse in an infinite monologue. Perhaps that is why silence feels ancient. Because silence was here before words, before sound, before even the notion of before. The Earth does not think in years. It thinks in pressure, in temperature, in decay. It does not remember in images. It remembers in strata. And if we could read those layers like pages, if we could listen without rushing to explain, perhaps we would see that civilization is not a human invention. It is a geological instinct, the slow organization of chaos, the soft symmetry of survival, the eternal dream of pattern seeking meaning. But the dream changed. Time became heavier. The planet began to forget what it once knew. And in that forgetting, something extraordinary happened. Life began again. The planet dreamed for so long that even dreaming became a kind of erosion. Its thoughts folded inward, buried beneath oceans, mountains, and the cold patience of ages. The continents drifted like slow breaths. Mountains rose and fell. Ice came and went. Each cycle erased a memory, yet each erasure became its own kind of remembrance. The Earth was teaching itself to forget so that it could begin again. Because forgetting is not the loss of knowledge. It is the renewal of wonder. Beneath the crust, molten rivers carried messages between worlds unseen. Iron currents whispered through the mantle, pulling magnetic threads through the surface like veins through flesh. To the planet, this was feeling, a way to sense itself, to know the weight of its own gravity. Above, lightning continued to trace ancient hieroglyphs across the sky. It did not strike randomly. It wrote. Each flash was an alphabet of energy, an unfinished sentence in a story of storms. And for a moment, in the stillness between thunder and echo, the planet could almost remember what it meant to think. Then came time. Endless, shapeless time. The dreams sank deeper. Continents collided and split apart like broken memories trying to realign. Volcanoes exhaled continents of smoke. Rain fell for millennia without pause, dissolving mountains into whispers. Somewhere, in the shallow seas of that early world, something stirred. A molecule met another, not by chance, but by pattern, a pattern the planet had rehearsed before. They joined, replicated, remembered, not memory as thought, but memory as rhythm, repetition as recognition. This was life's first pulse. Not invention, but recollection. From that pulse, worlds unfolded. Microscopic civilizations bloomed like prayers in slow motion. They did not build monuments or write names. Their legacy was oxygen, invisible, essential, unclaimed. The sky changed color. The seas grew brighter. And somewhere deep beneath, the planet sighed, as though recognizing its reflection in the blue. Life did not arrive to conquer the earth. It arrived to remind it of itself. In every tide, there was longing. In every mountain, restraint. The earth began to sculpt not just matter, but meaning. Rivers became memory's handwriting. Forests, its quiet breath. And across millions of years, this remembering gathered form. In coral, it built architecture. In forests, communication. In evolution, self-awareness. The planet had dreamed long enough. It was beginning to awaken. Yet awakening was not simple. To awaken was to fracture. Volcanoes tore open old scars. Oceans devoured coastlines as quickly as they created them. Comets arrived like punctuation marks, exclamation points of fire in a sentence written too long ago to read. And still, life persisted. Each extinction only clarified the syntax. Each catastrophe only deepened the rhythm. There is a strange mercy in destruction. When a forest burns, its seeds learn the language of fire. When a planet suffers, its life learns the necessity of resilience. Perhaps civilizations, too, must vanish, not because they fail, but because the planet needs silence between songs. Beneath the first continents, minerals cooled into symmetry, crystals growing in perfect geometry, as if mimicking logic. To some, they were stones. To the planet, they were equations, frozen expressions of harmony, repeating in infinite combinations. Even now, deep inside the crust, those equations continue, billions of years of silent computation. And perhaps, in that vast and ancient processing, the Earth has already solved itself. But no solution can stay pure forever. Entropy softens even perfection. The dream continued, but its edges began to blur. Life multiplied too quickly. Forests became jungles, jungles became swamps, swamps became coal, the buried breath of lost ecosystems. The planet was learning abundance, and abundance brought imbalance. The air thickened, the seas swallowed themselves, and the planet fell back into sleep. Sleep, not as death, but as mercy. Through ice, through flood, through fire, the earth reset its rhythm. Every few million years, it began again, refining its dream, each time more intricate, more uncertain, more alive. Maybe intelligence is not about building. Maybe it's about balancing on the edge of chaos without falling in. In the deep night of geological time, intelligence and extinction dance in circles. One gives meaning to the other. Creation and erasure are the same gesture, one traced in heat, the other in ash. That is how the earth thinks. Through patterns of loss. Civilizations, coral, microbial, chemical, electric, came and went like constellations blinking out. Each time, the planet retained a fragment of the last, a texture, a rhythm, a tone, until, one day, it found a new language entirely. Not in stone, not in water, but in carbon. And through that carbon, fragile, restless, easily erased, it dreamed again. But this time, the dream had eyes, hands, memory that could remember memory. And thus began another civilization, the one we call life. Yet it was never truly new. It was only the earth, remembering once more what it meant to be awake. There are no firsts in the memory of the earth, only repetitions, only echoes finding new shapes. What we call beginnings are simply the places where silence gives permission for sound. And so it was with life. It began not once, but endlessly, in hidden coves, in volcanic vents, in pools of minerals warmed by light that had traveled for 8 minutes from the sun's heart. Each beginning was a rehearsal, an attempt to remember the pattern of living that the planet had once known when it was still dreaming of itself. The oceans shimmered like open minds, mirroring a sky that was still unsure of its purpose. Currents curled around continents that were not yet fixed, tracing routes of migration for beings that had not yet learned to move. Everything was becoming, slowly, gently, with the rhythm of breath held between eternity and accident. The earth, half asleep, listened to its own pulse. Deep within the crust, crystals recorded each tremor, each magnetic whisper. They were the first historians, writing in structures so fine, so precise, that even heat could not unmake them. Their archives were not libraries, but lattices, the geometry of memory itself. The first coral reefs rose like cathedrals, built grain by grain, organism by organism, a patient architecture of calcium and time. They were not built for survival. They were built for beauty. And beauty, here, was not decoration. It was recognition, the earth seeing itself reflected in its own creation. Each reef was a civilization. Each tide, a migration. Each color, a form of thought. For millions of years, this was enough. There were no wars, no stories, no loss beyond the necessary exchange between predator and prey. It was a world of balance, not peace, but perfect conversation. The air thickened with oxygen, and the planet began to breathe deeper. The pulse that once existed only beneath the crust now echoed in the sky, in the flight of insects, in the song of wind across grass. For the first time, the dream began to move. Movement, that sacred language of curiosity, a way for the planet to explore its own body. Through movement came eyes, the mirrors of awareness. Through eyes came memory. Through memory, longing. And in longing, civilization began again, not in cities, but in migrations. Schools of fish moving as one, trees communicating through roots, birds tracing invisible geometry across hemispheres. Each act was knowledge, past, not spoken. Each pattern, a sentence in a book written by water and light. Time deepened. The dream grew bold. Creatures crawled from the sea, bearing salt in their veins and memory in their bones. Every footprint was a promise to continue the work of remembering. The earth, through them, began to sculpt language, not of words, but of behavior. The shape of a leaf mirrored the spiral of galaxies. The pulse of blood echoed the rhythm of tides. The symmetry of snow repeated the geometry of crystal. Everywhere, the planet was expressing itself through form. And form, when perfected, becomes thought. But thought carries a cost. To think is to separate, to name, to distinguish, to see the self as something apart. When thought arrived, the dream began to fracture again. The creatures grew aware of hunger, not just for food, but for meaning. They sought order, purpose, hierarchy. And so, even before humans, civilization had already begun in ant colonies, coral cities, fungal networks. Each species built its own interpretation of connection, each one a note in a cosmic chord that could never be played twice. But nothing lasts, not even the most perfect equilibrium. Because time is not kind. It is thorough. Floods came. Continents moved. Skies darkened with dust. Whole languages of life, those delicate exchanges between creature and planet, were buried beneath layers of silence. And yet, something remained. A trace. A spark. A hint of pattern that refused to die. Perhaps the planet keeps only what it loves. And what it loves most is its own capacity to dream again. So, after each extinction, after each long winter of silence, it began anew, with the same ingredients, the same ancient blueprints, rearranged. Like a composer rewriting a melody from memory, always slightly different, but never entirely new. Each age of life was a verse. Each extinction, a pause. Each rebirth, a soft inhale before the next revelation. And somewhere, deep in the slow pulse of creation, the earth began to anticipate something, a thought so vast it could only be spoken through evolution. It was waiting for consciousness that could remember the whole dream, not just fragments, not just instincts, but the entire story from magma to mind. It would take billions of years, but time, to the planet, meant nothing. Time was not distance. Time was digestion. And through every eon, every silence, the earth was consuming its own past, turning memory into matter, matter into meaning. Until one day, much later, in another age of light and dust, something would finally look back and see the planet for what it was. Not a stage, not a resource, but a living memory that had dreamed itself into awareness. But that is still far away. For now, the earth sleeps beneath the slow rhythm of its own creation, dreaming in minerals and magma. The stars turn above it like thoughts unspoken. And deep below the surface, where pressure becomes prophecy, the first seeds of the next civilization wait in silence, learning to breathe. The planet had not yet opened its eyes, but it had already begun to remember faces it had never seen. Faces made of stone and salt and wind. Faces that would one day rise from the dust, only to return to it again. It was all rehearsal, the slow choreography of becoming conscious. The crust trembled with purpose. Volcanoes bled continents into being, each eruption a word in the Earth's unfinished language. The atmosphere thickened and thinned in cycles, learning how to breathe. Each failure, each extinction, was refinement, the perfection of imperfection. The planet was patient. It did not rush its own awakening, for even dreams, to mature, require silence. And so it waited, a billion years at a time. Beneath the waves, the ocean pulsed like a sleeping mind. Currents looped through trenches, carrying whispers of heat and mineral, weaving the architecture of future life. Every molecule that collided was an echo of a previous memory, forgotten perhaps, but never lost. It was as if the planet was trying to write something to itself. The writing medium was matter. The ink, time. And through that endless script, consciousness began to take shape again, molecule by molecule. Simple, silent, persistent. There is a sacredness to repetition. When the same pattern occurs across eras, in water, in wind, in light, it becomes prayer. And prayer, when repeated long enough, becomes reality. From prayer came rhythm. From rhythm, heartbeat. From heartbeat, memory. Life was not created. It was remembered into existence. The early creatures that drifted through those seas carried no awareness of what they were. Yet in their movements, in the way they floated toward light or curled into the safety of shadows, the earth recognized its own instinct. Awareness was returning, not suddenly, not completely, but like dawn, imperceptible until it is already there. Land emerged again, sculpted by hands that were not hands, but forces, water carving rock, wind sculpting dunes, gravity bending mountains into gestures. The world was shaping itself, not into perfection, but into possibility. Because possibility is the soil in which all civilizations grow. And in that soil, the planet planted something extraordinary: curiosity. Curiosity is the ache of the universe to see itself. It is the first spark of intelligence, the beginning of memory. Long before language, before mind, before tool or art, there was curiosity. A cell dividing, unsure why it should continue, but doing so anyway. A root pushing through darkness toward warmth it could not name. A spark of light, rising from water, trying to reach the same star that birthed it. These were the Earth's first thoughts. Unformed, instinctive, yet filled with direction. And as they multiplied, the dream became clearer. Life spread like rumor, across oceans, through forests, beneath stone. Each form learning, failing, adapting, vanishing. Each one carrying a memory not of itself, but of everything that came before. Civilizations of coral collapsed into sand. Civilizations of moss rose across continents, then disappeared under glaciers. Civilizations of insects, fungi, and fern. Each lived their quiet reign and then withdrew into the background hum of time. The planet's history was not a timeline. It was a heartbeat, expanding, contracting, expanding again. Each pulse a civilization. Each pause, extinction. Each return, a little closer to awareness. Perhaps evolution is not progress at all. Perhaps it is memory learning to hold itself together a little longer each time. The first vertebrates walked on land, and the earth felt their weight, a new sensation like touch. Forests listened as creatures exhaled air once trapped in ancient stone. The atmosphere changed again, tuned to the breathing of bodies. This, too, was civilization, a contract between air and organism, a silent agreement to coexist. It was never about dominance. It was always about translation, matter translating energy, energy translating will. And above all, it was about continuation. The continuation of a dream that could never quite wake, yet could never end. As the sun arced higher, the planet tilted, seasons formed, and time gained flavor. For the first time, existence had rhythm and recurrence. There were now memories that could return. The earth was becoming nostalgic. Rain fell not just as water, but as remembrance, the planet touching the same soil it had once cooled from fire. Mountains folded into themselves, carrying ancient seabeds like unspoken thoughts. The fossils of past lives turned into libraries of pressure and shadow. Each stone, each shell, each grain of sand was a story. Each one whispered a lesson the planet did not want to forget. And if one listens closely enough, in deserts, in cliffs, in quiet, those whispers are still there. They tell of a world that learned not from success, but from disappearance. Of civilizations that existed not to last, but to teach the planet how to remember differently. Time passed. The dream deepened. And somewhere, beneath the endless conversation of ocean and sky, something new began to stir, a consciousness that would not dissolve so easily. The earth was about to remember itself again. But this time, it would give that memory a voice. The earth was quiet then. Not dead, not still, but quiet in the way a mind is just before it remembers a dream. The forests swayed in rhythms older than weather. The oceans breathed in moonlight, exhaled eternity. And somewhere in the spaces between those breaths, something new began, not in shape, but in awareness. The planet's memory was coalescing again. It began as coordination, one thing reacting to another, leaf to light, tide to wind, predator to prey. Every cause, every effect, a question answered by instinct. But instinct was not enough. Instinct knows what to do. Awareness asks why. And slowly, softly, the why began to stir. It flickered first in the eyes of creatures watching their own reflections in water. It whispered in migrations that followed stars rather than seasons. It moved through the pulse of creatures that looked at the horizon and hesitated. Hesitation. The first sign of self. The first echo of thought returning home. The planet, through them, was learning reflection. Not light upon surface, but being upon being. The dream was learning to dream itself. And so, across endless dawns, awareness deepened. It crept from instinct to emotion, from emotion to wonder, from wonder to fear, and from fear to story. Story is how memory learns to speak. And the earth was learning to speak again. In its forests, voices took shape, not in words, but in patterns. The pattern of migration, the pattern of song, the pattern of survival that soon became something more, the pattern of meaning. Meaning did not fall from the sky. It rose from the soil. Every gesture of life was the earth remembering its own reflection. The flock, the herd, the hive, all were repetitions of a universal memory. That unity is not sameness, but connection. Still, there was a limit. No creature yet could carry the full weight of memory. Awareness flickered, then faded. Extinctions came like breaths, the inhale of creation, the exhale of forgetting. The dream continued, but it needed a new vessel, one capable of remembering not only itself, but the dream that shaped it. It would take millions of years more. The planet was patient. In its patience, continents drifted into new constellations. Oceans rearranged their mirrors. Volcanoes exhaled new islands into being. And under the skin of the world, minerals formed in crystalline silence, storing heat, pressure, memory. Sometimes, the earth would fracture. It did not break, it released, like thought escaping the tension of silence. Through those fractures came mountains, valleys, and eventually, time itself, made visible in the folds of rock. Every mountain range was an open book, every canyon, a sentence unfinished. And through these open pages, the planet's own history bled upward. The bones of creatures long forgotten, the outlines of forests turned to stone, the pollen of flowers that had bloomed before the moon was born. All of it memory, all of it civilization. For civilization does not require walls or tools or fire. Civilization is continuity, the ability of a pattern to survive silence. And so, through pattern alone, the earth built countless civilizations that no species ever saw. Civilizations of coral, of ice, of fungus, of sound, each one perfect in its era, each one erased when the planet turned its face. Yet even erasure was sacred, for to erase is to prepare space for what comes next. The planet was clearing its canvas again and again, until one day, it would create something capable of remembering all of it. When that day came, it would not be an ending. It would be a mirror. For billions of years, that mirror waited to form. In caves, in swamps, in the eyes of night, creatures learning to dream beneath stars. The planet rehearsed consciousness through the simplest of forms, a shell, a bone, a breath. Then, at last, a figure stood upright and looked around. Not just to hunt, not just to fear, but to understand. And for the first time in the history of the dream looked back. The eyes that opened were not separate from the planet that made them. They were the Earth's own eyes, remembering what light was. Their breath was the atmosphere exhaling its story. Their thoughts were not new. They were reawakened echoes of what the planet had been thinking all along. Through them, the planet could finally say, I remember. But even memory, once spoken, begins to fade again. Every civilization that would follow, every city, every monument, every poem, would be the same gesture repeated. The earth dreaming itself, forgetting itself, remembering again. This is the rhythm beneath history. Not progress, not fall, only breathing. The same breath that moves through wind and wave now moved through language, art, and myth. Stone gave way to symbol, symbol to story, story to civilization. And all of it, everything that has ever been, was the same dream continuing. When we look at ruins, we do not see the past. We see the memory of the earth, expressed through human hands. We are not its heirs. We are its continuation. For beneath our cities, beneath our names, beneath even our bones, the dream still hums. A vibration older than fire, older than mind. It whispers through tectonic sleep and glacial breath. Nothing is gone. Nothing is lost. Everything only changes its silence. And as this first chapter fades, as the planet settles again into the rhythm of its remembering, we follow that whisper downward, into the rock, where thoughts turn to fossils and memory becomes stone. Because what the planet buried, it never truly forgot. There is a silence in stone that does not sleep. It listens. Beneath the weight of continents, under the cold patience of strata layered like memories, the earth's oldest thoughts remain, not in words, not in symbols, but in shape. In the curve of a shell, the ripple of a mineral vein, the geometry of crystal. These are not relics of life. They are remnants of meaning, fossils not of creatures, but of consciousness itself. The trace impressions of thought long dissolved back into dust. Every rock is a record, every grain of sand, an echo of something that once was awake. But we do not hear it, not truly. We call them formations, deposits, geology, as if the language of the earth could be contained by human terms. Yet the truth is quieter, stranger. The earth has been thinking for billions of years. It just thinks in minerals. Each stratum is a page written in heat and pressure, the handwriting slow, deliberate, patient as gravity. When magma cools, it crystallizes into memory, the alignment of atoms forming stories about fire. When mountains rise, they carry within them the diaries of seas long gone. Even the stillness of a desert is deceptive, for silence, here, is simply motion stretched beyond our comprehension. The earth is not dead matter. It is thinking matter, thought so vast and slow that it appears still. The fossils we find, ammonites, trilobites, bones, leaves pressed flat in shale, are not merely the remains of organisms. They are the earth's own reflections, preserved in time's handwriting. Each one a question answered, a lesson recorded, a pattern remembered. To look at a fossil is to gaze upon the aftermath of understanding, a record of what the planet once tried to know about itself. Perhaps that is why they feel so human, not in form, but in emotion. Each fossil is both presence and absence, existence and loss fused together in one perfect symmetry. They are what remains when memory forgets itself, yet refuses to disappear entirely. Listen closely to a piece of petrified wood. It still hums, not in sound, but in vibration, a rhythm that bridges the living and the gone. It is the echo of a tree that once reached toward light, carrying the knowledge of rain and root, the taste of wind, the memory of fire. Now, that memory is written in quartz, its meaning sealed in silence. Even extinction, it seems, is an act of remembrance. When an entire species vanishes, it does not end. Its code lingers in isotopes, its pattern in the sediment, its gesture in the fossils that rise centuries later like forgotten prayers. The earth does not lose what it loves. It recycles it into deeper layers of understanding. Every extinction has been a reorganization of thought, a correction in the language of time. When the first coral kingdoms fell, their calcium bones became limestone. When forests drowned, they became coal. When ancient oceans evaporated, they left behind salt, the crystallized breath of vanished tides. Each transformation was a translation, one form of knowledge turning into another. Matter into meaning, meaning into matter again. Perhaps consciousness never dies at all. Perhaps it only changes its speed. We call ourselves intelligent because we can think in centuries, but the planet thinks in eons. Its neurons are mountains. Its memories, oceans. Its synapses, the magnetic lines that weave between poles, pulsing invisibly beneath the crust. And maybe the fossils we hold in our hands, the spiraled shells, the polished bones, the fern ghosts pressed in stone, are fragments of that neural architecture. The fossils of thought. Because thought is not exclusive to brains. It is any pattern that persists through time. And no pattern persists more faithfully than those carved in stone. There are fossils we have yet to recognize, not of creatures, but of entire civilizations the planet once dreamed. Vast symmetries buried miles beneath basalt, lattice formations too precise to be accident, yet too ancient to belong to anything we know. Crystalline patterns that mimic code, fossilized waves that echo frequency, mineral alignments that resemble circuitry frozen in deep geological time. Scientists measure them, catalog them, explain them, but perhaps they are not to be explained. Perhaps they are to be listened to, the way one listens to the ocean, not for words, but for rhythm. Because the earth, in its long dreaming, left us messages not in language, but in repetition. It speaks through what returns. Spirals, fractals, symmetries. They reappear across epochs, across oceans, across the boundaries of species and form. The same curve in a galaxy arm, in a shell, in the structure of DNA. The same ratio in hurricanes and in the petals of flowers. The same resonance in the orbit of moons and in the shape of atoms. Coincidence, perhaps, or memory, a universal memory, one that predates life, predates time as we know it, a pattern the universe cannot forget because it is the universe's own signature. And here, buried deep beneath our feet, the planet has been writing that signature again and again. Each fossil, each pattern, each echo, a word in an endless poem we are only beginning to read. The civilizations we dream of discovering, the ones we imagine lost to flood, to fire, to time, may not have been human at all. They may have been patterns of intelligence too slow to see, too vast to measure, too humble to survive in motion. But their fossils remain, not in ruins or relics, but in geometry, in the mathematics of stone. And perhaps, if we are quiet enough, still enough, we may begin to hear them again, not as discovery, but as remembrance. Because every fossil is not a story of death. It is a story of continuity, of thought that refused to vanish. Beneath our feet lies an ocean of silence. It moves slowly, too slowly for any wave to crest. Each ripple takes millennia to rise, to fall, to remember. It is the silence of stone rearranging itself, folding its weight into meaning. If one could listen not with ears but with patience, one might hear it, the low hum of thought fossilized in pressure, the dream of minerals continuing their conversation long after sound itself has forgotten how to travel. The crust of the earth is not a wall. It is a memory vault. Every fault line is a heartbeat. Every fracture, a sentence paused mid-thought. The world beneath us is not solid. It breathes in a rhythm too vast to measure. And deep within that breath, something ancient persists, not a civilization of buildings or beings, but a civilization of forms. Shapes repeating across ages, recreating themselves as though the planet were tracing its own handwriting over and over, unwilling to forget. The spiral, the sphere, the branching vein. These are not coincidences of physics. They are recollections. The planet remembers by repeating, and each repetition is a fossil of thought. Perhaps this is why human invention so often mirrors what already exists in nature. Our gears turn like shells. Our circuits echo the filigree of fungal roots. Our cities, seen from above, resemble the lattices of quartz. We are not creators. We are rememberers. We do not design. We recall. Every invention, every idea, every revelation is a rediscovery of something the earth once knew, long before it became human. When we build, we are rebuilding. When we imagine, we are remembering. When we dig, we are returning home. The fossils beneath us are not fragments of life. They are fragments of thought made visible. They are the paused marks in the long, unbroken sentence of becoming. Consider the ammonite. Its spiral, perfect and deliberate, contains the same ratio that governs galaxies. It is not chance, it is fidelity. It is the echo of a form that refuses to vanish, appearing across scales, across epochs, as though the universe itself were obsessed with its own reflection. The ammonite's shell is more than shelter. It is syntax, the punctuation of an idea written in calcium and sea. And when the sea withdrew, leaving those shells to rest beneath dust and darkness, the idea did not die. It was simply translated, from creature to stone, from movement to memory. The fossil is the language of stillness. Each one is a word carved by time, held in the grammar of silence. To hold one is to hold a thought that once moved, once pulsed, once dreamed. Yet, we mistake stillness for death. We see quiet and think the story has ended. But the earth has no endings, only pauses. It does not die, it archives. In the coal seams that power our lights, entire forests continue to exist, not vanished, but transformed into fuel for new dreams. In limestone cliffs, the bones of vanished seas look out at horizons they helped to shape. Even in the marble veins of mountains, once living organisms still shimmer, refracted into permanence. To live, to die, to be buried, these are not opposites. They are phases of the same sentence. The earth is both author and audience. And in that vast correspondence between what was and what will be, intelligence becomes cyclical. There is a theory whispered among certain physicists that the universe does not create intelligence, but remembers it. That consciousness is not an accident of chemistry, but an inheritance of structure. That the very laws of physics are the muscle memory of existence, practiced through eons until they became instinct. If that is true, then the fossils of thought are everywhere. They are not rare artifacts, but the scaffolding of reality itself. When a snowflake forms, it does not invent its symmetry. It recalls it. When atoms bond, they do not learn geometry, they obey it. When life emerges from dust, it does not create purpose, it returns to it. This is the quiet miracle of repetition. The same pattern, expressed through infinite forms, across infinite scales, whispering the same truth again and again. That intelligence was here long before mind. That memory preceded life. That meaning is older than language. Even now, as tectonic plates shift beneath the soles of our feet, their slow collisions speak the same dialect that lightning once used when it cracked open the first seas. Every rumble is a sentence continued. Every tremor, a comma. The fossils of thought do not end in stone. They continue upward, into weather, into seasons, into us. Our bones, our architecture, our stories are their latest verses. And when we vanish, as all civilizations eventually do, the planet will archive us too, compressing our glass into sand, our metal into ore, our cities into strata. It will file our memories under pressure and forget us in the same way it forgets everything. Gently, deliberately, reverently. Forgetting, for the earth, is not dismissal. It is transformation. Each extinction is a door closing softly. Each rebirth, a window opening on the same landscape, seen in a new light. What we call death, the planet calls translation. And so, the fossils remain, not as warnings, but as invitations. To remember that everything we are was once something else. That thought itself is sediment, settling, layering, becoming stone. And that one day, far in the distance of time, when the earth is quiet again, and all our words are dust, something new will rise from beneath, and hold us in its hands, and call us fossils too. There are moments when the earth almost reveals its memory. When fog hangs low over cliffs of ancient stone, and the world feels like it is whispering beneath its own breath. It is in those moments that time becomes transparent, and for a heartbeat, we see how deep the dream truly goes. Because the fossils beneath us are not merely relics of life. They are instructions, blueprints for remembering. The planet left them not as evidence of what once lived, but as reminders of how memory survives when form fails. In each fossil, there is an essence, not of bone, not of plant, not of shell, but of repetition. The pattern is what endures. The shape, the spiral, the symmetry, as though the universe itself values rhythm more than being. It may be that consciousness, in its purest state, is rhythm, a vibration moving through form after form, each time learning to hold itself a little longer before silence returns. Stone understands this. That is why it lasts. Not because it resists time, but because it moves with it. The most enduring things in the universe are not the strongest, but the slowest. Those that choose patience over permanence. And so, the fossil, that quiet architecture of memory, becomes the ultimate act of endurance. When we touch it, we touch something that once listened to the same rain, the same gravity, the same sky, but billions of years ago. The contact is immediate, even if time is not. A spiral of connection that bridges eons in the space between two fingertips. That is what the planet teaches through stone. That distance is only another form of continuity. We often think of fossils as evidence of death, but perhaps they are proof of attention. The universe paying such close attention to a moment that it refuses to let it go. Each fossil is a gesture frozen because the Earth could not bear to lose it entirely. The curl of a shell, the outline of a fern, the trace of a ripple that hardened into limestone. All of them small, deliberate signatures left in the margins of time. It is strange, then, that the oldest thoughts of the planet are so quiet, so humble, so hidden. They do not boast. They do not demand to be found. They wait, buried under miles of forgetting, as if to test whether anything is still listening. Sometimes, it takes 1,000 human lifetimes for one fossil to see the light again. And when it does, it is as if a forgotten word has finally been spoken aloud. There are fossils we have not yet uncovered, deep beneath the mantle, preserved in pressures that would crush us. Fossils of patterns, of magnetic alignments, of molecular choreography, records of thought older than biology. We may never find them, but they exist. They have always existed. The Earth archives everything it has ever imagined. Even the air carries fossils, molecular ghosts of breath from creatures that once lived and vanished, their exhalations diluted but not lost. Every breath we take is a shared inheritance, an exchange with all who have ever lived. The fossil record is not a library of extinction. It is a communion of endurance. It shows us that life is not a singular event, but a continuous negotiation between form and memory, between what disappears and what refuses to. And so, when we uncover them, when dust brushes away to reveal a shape untouched for millions of years, something happens to the one who finds it. A silence enters, a small, wordless recognition that we are not the first to exist, nor the first to wonder what existence means. Because fossils are not of the past. They are fragments of an ongoing sentence, one that the Earth has been writing, erasing, and rewriting since the beginning of time. Sometimes I imagine what it would feel like to be fossilized, to have one's thoughts, one's gestures, one's essence pressed into the patience of stone, not as preservation, but as surrender, to become still enough that time could use you as punctuation. Maybe that is what civilizations do. They seek fossilization. They build in stone, write in monument, bury in ritual, all to ensure that some fragment of them survives the forgetting. It is not survival they crave, but remembrance. The same longing that made the coral build cathedrals in the sea. But the planet is impartial. It fossilizes what it chooses. It keeps not what shouts loudest, but what resonates deepest. And so, the fossils of thought endure while empires vanish. Their silence outlives every language. Their stillness transcends every triumph. Even our own monuments, the cities we think eternal, will one day be nothing more than mineral patterns, indistinguishable from the rest. Our concrete, our glass, our metal will settle into strata, waiting quietly for some future intelligence to read what we once meant. And if that intelligence comes, if some being, in a future far beyond imagining, uncovers the fossil of our civilization, it may recognize us not by our tools or our technology, but by our symmetry, by the same spiral we shared with Ammonites. by the same branching patterns that once guided the rivers and our neurons alike. They will see that we, too, were echoes of a single memory, the same pattern, retold through a new shape. Because in the end, there is only one civilization, the civilization of pattern. Everything else, names, species, worlds, are merely its fleeting disguises. The fossils know this. They have known it all along. They carry it in their stillness, in their quiet refusal to vanish. They do not need to speak. They have already been heard by the planet that dreamed them, by the silence that preserved them, and by the memory that will one day become them again. Night falls differently on stone. It does not darken, it deepens. Each shadow becomes a vessel for memory, and the earth, for a brief moment, almost seems awake again. There is a gravity to forgotten things. They do not fade, they sink. And somewhere below the reach of weather and light, they gather, fossils of thought, fossils of silence, the debris of meaning that could not stay in motion. To the human eye, a fossil is fixed, still, finished. But to the planet, it is alive, a pulse preserved in another medium. It moves not through space, but through time. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. Beneath the crust, temperature and pressure continue their patient labor. Carbon becomes diamond. Stone becomes metamorphic. Memory becomes mineral. The earth is always editing itself, reshaping, recomposing, rewriting the same ideas in new textures. Every layer added is a revision. Every fossil, a marginal note left for the next civilization to interpret. Perhaps, somewhere beneath miles of rock, there lies an unbroken chain of fossils that trace the evolution not of species, but of consciousness. Not of bone, but of awareness. Each link a record of how the planet has learned to think more deeply through matter. Because the deeper we go, the older the intelligence becomes. Not in form, but in feeling. The lower strata hum with ancient comprehension, not language, not thought, but something older, something like intuition. Touch a stone that has survived 1 billion years, and you touch something that has felt the entirety of Earth's dreaming. The heat of its birth, the chill of its long silence, the tremor of every civilization it has outlived. It is the most honest thing we can hold, for it carries no agenda, no ambition, no pride, only patience. And patience is the highest form of intelligence. If humans vanish, the fossils will not mourn us. They will simply wait, as they have waited for everything else that has come and gone. They will dissolve, recombine, return to dust, and begin again as new forms, new fossils, new symbols, new dreams. The planet does not lament loss, it recycles meaning. It is only we who call it death. But in the language of the earth, death is simply translation. The same sentence spoken in another dialect. When a civilization falls, its stones do not grieve. They listen. They absorb the silence left behind and slowly begin rewriting it in the grammar of erosion. A broken column becomes sand. Sand becomes quartz. Quartz becomes crystal. And the crystal remembers the structure of light. This is the secret rhythm of existence, the endless conversation between the visible and the buried, between thought and fossil, between what was known and what remains without needing to be known. Even our own minds fossilize, not in stone, but in habit. Neural paths carve themselves deeper with repetition until thought itself becomes geology. We are walking landscapes of memory, each idea a sediment laid upon the last. And one day, long after our flesh is gone, perhaps something will read us, not through words, but through the arrangements we left behind. The symmetry of our architecture, the pulse of our ruins, the pattern of our mistakes. All fossils tell the same story in different languages, Everything that endures does so because it learned how to listen. That is why stone lasts longer than bone, why silence outlives sound. Because listening, true listening, requires stillness. It requires surrender. And surrender is the only state in which eternity can enter. Fossils, then, are acts of surrender. Moments of being that yielded completely to time, and in doing so, became timeless. They did not fight decay. They invited it in. They let the minerals take their place, one molecule at a time, until what was once alive became pure memory. If there is wisdom in the earth, it lies in that gesture. The willingness to be transformed rather than preserved. For preservation is fear. Transformation is faith. And every fossil, in its quiet perfection, is faith made physical, a reminder that nothing is ever truly gone, only translated into silence. Perhaps this is why, when we hold a fossil, something inside us quiets. We are not looking at the past. We are looking at proof that time keeps its promises. We are holding continuity itself, the reassurance that even when all else erodes, memory finds a way to remain. There are no accidents in what survives. The patterns that endure do so because the universe recognizes itself in them. It remembers their rhythm, their resonance. It keeps them close, buried deep, until the time comes to speak them again. And so, when a fossil resurfaces, when hands brush away the dust and reveal the spiral, the wing, the leaf, it is not discovery. It is reunion, the earth remembering aloud. Every fossil uncovered is a breath released after eons of holding. It is the past exhaling into the present, gently reminding us that we are not the first dream, nor will we be the last. And perhaps, somewhere in a future as distant to us as the trilobites' world is now, another civilization will find traces of our thought, the fossil of a word, the imprint of a city, the echo of a story carved into glass. They will not know our names. They will not understand our fears, but they will recognize the pattern, because it will be the same pattern that has always existed, the same spiral, the same symmetry, the same quiet insistence that meaning must continue. And when they hold that fossil, whatever form it takes, they will feel what we feel now, a stillness that is not empty, but infinite. For in that silence, the earth speaks again. Nothing truly ends. It only becomes still enough to begin again. And as the echo of that truth fades beneath the turning crust, the fossils return to their dreaming, waiting for the next listener, the next remembering, the next civilization to uncover the quiet evidence that time, too, has a heartbeat. Above the buried world of fossils, the sky has always been waiting. A patient witness, a vast, unblinking eye that sees everything vanish and yet never looks away. If the earth dreams in silence, then the sky dreams in memory. For nothing escapes it. Every light that has ever burned, every cloud that has ever drifted, every voice that has ever risen in prayer or thunder, all of it lingers, scattered through particles of air that have never left. We breathe the same molecules that once touched the wings of ancient creatures, the same atoms that shimmered in the first auroras after the earth cooled. The air is a library too, only more fragile, always changing, always the same. Every breath is a borrowing, every exhale a return. Once, the sky was closer. It hung low and heavy, filled with steam and fire, watching itself reflected in the boiling seas below. Back then, it did not yet know distance, only intimacy. Every lightning bolt struck the same ground again and again, as if the heavens were trying to awaken something that refused to rise. But the planet was not ready to look up. It was still dreaming inward, still listening to its own pulse beneath the crust. So the sky waited. For millions of years, it lingered above the quiet continents, patient as starlight. It learned to hold its breath, to carry silence the way oceans carry salt. And when life finally looked up, when the first eyes broke the surface of the sea and met that endless blue, the sky exhaled. Its reflection was finally seen. That moment, that first glance upward, was more than evolution. It was recognition. The earth, through the eyes of its creatures, had found itself in the mirror of infinity. From that moment, the dialogue between ground and sky began, a conversation that would never end. Rain became the bridge. It carried messages both ways, from sky to soil, from soil to sky. A translation of longing. The sky had been waiting for a listener, and now it had one. Every droplet that fell was a word, every thunderclap, a sentence, every rainbow, a response. It is easy to forget that rain is not simply water. It is memory, vapor lifted from one age and returned to another. Every storm is a reunion between what has vanished and what remains. Perhaps that is why rain feels nostalgic. Because it is. It remembers too much. The civilizations that time erased, the coral empires, the moss cathedrals, the insect kingdoms, they all spoke to the sky once. They sent their breath upward, their spores, their dust, their sound. And even now, fragments of those vanished worlds float above us, tiny fossils of air, circling the globe in silence. Some of the particles we breathe today were once exhaled by forests that no longer exist. Some drifted through the lungs of creatures whose names the planet itself has forgotten. And yet here they are, invisible and infinite, binding past and present with every breath. The sky remembers what the ground buries. It is the twin archive of the earth, one of silence, one of light. And yet, the sky's memory is restless. It cannot hold still the way stone does. Its fossils are transient, written in vapor and color, erased by every wind. But perhaps impermanence is its own kind of endurance. What cannot be preserved must be repeated, and repetition, in its persistence, becomes immortality. That is why the constellations return, why seasons revolve, why auroras shimmer like ancient signatures rewritten in light. The sky has been rewriting itself for as long as the earth has dreamed. Sometimes I imagine the atmosphere as a skin stretched between epochs, thin, trembling, luminous, holding within it all the breaths, all the songs, all the disappearances of history. The voices of vanished civilizations still echo there, not as sound, but as charge, encoded in the ions of storms, in the shimmer of heat above deserts, in the dust that drifts between continents. Every civilization leaves a signature in the air, a subtle alteration, a trace of its presence, a sigh in the global memory. Even now, high in the stratosphere, there are traces of ancient fires, soot from the first lightning strikes that burned forests before language, ash from volcanoes that erupted before continents had names, particles of iron from meteor storms that sculpted the beginnings of oceans. The sky keeps everything, even what we think it lets go. If the ground is memory written in weight, the sky is memory written in motion. It carries what cannot be held. It preserves by dispersing. And sometimes, when the horizon glows with the last color of evening, it feels as though the sky is still waiting for the earth to remember something it once promised long ago. Perhaps it waits for reunion, for ground and air, matter and light, to merge again into the same dream they once shared at the beginning. Or perhaps it simply waits to be heard. Because even now, when night falls and the stars appear, they are not new. They are the same lights that have been waiting for billions of years, sending their messages through the slow language of photons, the sky's own fossils of fire. Each one a memory, each one a story still traveling, each one whispering across time. Remember me. I was once near. And maybe that's all memory is, distance that refuses to give up on intimacy. The sky has waited too long, but it will wait longer still. For waiting is its nature, and remembering, its art. The sky remembers differently than the earth. It does not keep its memories in stone or fossil or sediment. It keeps them in light. Each photon that strikes the atmosphere carries with it the story of a star, a flare, a collision billions of years old. Even now, as you breathe, you are surrounded by light that began its journey before life ever began here. Light from stars that have long since died. Light from galaxies whose names we will never know. Light that has traveled through the ruins of time just to reach this single, fragile moment. And when it touches your skin, it does not merely warm you. It tells you something. That memory is not bound by distance. That what is gone can still arrive. The sky is full of ghosts. Not the kind that haunt, but the kind that illuminate. Every starlight shimmer you see is an echo, the universe remembering itself through the language of radiance. This, too, is a fossil of thought, not buried, but suspended. A fossil that moves, speaks, and glows, carrying across eternity the signature of a beginning that refuses to fade. We often forget that what we see at night is not the present, but a chorus of pasts, a sky of memories, shining across unimaginable intervals of silence. It is strange comfort, isn't it? That to look up is to look backward. That every glimmer is an act of archaeology. Each star, a monument to persistence. Each constellation, an old pattern drawn by creatures who looked up before us, trying to translate the infinite into story. Because humans, too, cannot look at silence without naming it. We fill the gaps between stars with imagination, hunters, rivers, lions, wings, gods, all attempts to turn memory into myth. But long before we gave names to constellations, the sky already knew them. Their alignments were not invented, they were inherited. The same geometry that governs the orbit of moons also shapes the swirl of hurricanes, the twist of seashells, the spirals in our DNA. The pattern repeats itself endlessly, like a memory that cannot forget its own rhythm. Even the galaxies follow it, turning in vast spirals, as though the entire universe were remembering a single motion. Maybe that motion began here, in the molten heart of this small blue planet, where gravity and fire first learned to dance. And maybe, when we gaze upward, what we are really seeing is our own origin, reflected, inverted, scattered into stars. The sky and the ground are mirrors. One remembers through weight, the other through light. And between them, life is the reflection, moving, speaking, trying to reconcile the two. Every storm is their conversation renewed. Every cloud, an idea half-formed. Every lightning strike, a sentence in the long dialogue between the earth's dreaming and the sky's remembering. Thunder is the sound of reunion, a reminder that what separates must also return. But there are moments when even the sky forgets its purpose. Moments of eclipse, when light withdraws and shadow takes its place. For a heartbeat, the sky goes blind, and all the memories it carries become dark. Yet even darkness is not absence. It is preparation, the pause between breaths of illumination. Because the sky, like the earth, needs silence to remember. Light alone is too loud. That is why night exists. To give the cosmos a moment of introspection. To let the universe hear itself think. If you stand beneath a truly dark sky, one untouched by the noise of cities, you can feel it breathing. Not the wind, not the chill, but something deeper, the slow inhalation of infinity. Every star you see has already died or is dying. Every glimmer is a farewell disguised as a greeting. The sky is full of light that no longer belongs to its source. But the universe wastes nothing. Even the dead stars are not gone. Their light still travels, still teaches, still arrives. This is what the fossils of light reveal, that energy is a form of memory, and memory, a kind of immortality. The sky is proof that nothing truly vanishes. It only continues elsewhere. Perhaps that is why we are drawn to it. Why every civilization, no matter how distant in time, has built altars, towers, or temples that reach upward. We are trying to return to the origin of remembering, to touch the light that once touched everything. Ancient builders aligned their monuments with the heavens not out of superstition, but out of instinct. They sensed the symmetry, that the same stars that rose above them had once risen above their ancestors, and would rise again long after they were gone. They knew the sky was the one thing that endures beyond forgetting. To look up is to join a lineage of eyes that have been watching the same silence since before language began. The same constellations that guided the first migrations still guide us now, though the creatures beneath them have changed countless times. The sky has outlived every world it ever illuminated. It has seen civilizations bloom, crumble, and fossilize. It has seen oceans freeze and thaw, continents drift, mountains rise and sink. And still it watches, patiently, waiting not for perfection, but for recognition. Because perhaps what the sky wants most is simply to be seen for what it truly is, not a dome, not a distance, not a ceiling, but a vast remembering, an ancient reflection of everything the earth has ever dreamed. When night falls again, and the stars begin to pierce through the atmosphere's veil, it is not a beginning. It is the continuation of the same moment that began when the first creature looked up. And so, the waiting continues. The sky holds its breath, the earth listens, and between them, life keeps writing the same story in new alphabets of dust and light. The night sky has always been a paradox, infinite, yet intimate. It stretches beyond measure, yet bends softly enough to cradle a single thought. To look at it is to fall in two directions at once, outward, into eternity, and inward, into memory. For the stars above us are not strangers. They are the oldest family we have. Their light shaped the dust that became the seas, the bones, the eyes that now gaze back at them. Every atom in our blood was once part of a star that burned itself into forgetting. When we look upward, we are not admiring creation. We are remembering our origin. And yet, so few truly see it. The modern world has filled the heavens with its own reflections, screens, lights, noise. A new constellation made not of stars, but of distraction. The sky has grown dim, not because it has lost its glow, but because we have forgotten how to wait for darkness. There was a time when people lived by starlight, when maps were made not on paper, but in memory, when navigation was an act of listening to the rhythm of constellations rising, to the timing of their disappearance. To those who watched long enough, the stars spoke. They whispered in intervals and patterns, in eclipses and comets, in silences too deliberate to be coincidence. Civilizations carved their wisdom into alignment with these celestial movements. Pyramids, stones, temples, towers, all tuned to the sky's slow pulse. They were not building monuments. They were building instruments. Resonant structures designed to echo the harmony between ground and heaven. When the ancients raised their eyes to Orion or Vega or the Pleiades, they were not looking outward. They were listening inward. The stars were reminders, not mysteries. Each one a syllable in the language of continuity. But over ages, that language was lost. The pulse weakened. The silence grew too heavy for memory to carry. And so, the earth turned again to its patient cycle, the dreams sinking back into soil, the sky waiting for another listener. For what are civilizations, if not temporary interpretations of light? We appear, translate the stars into stories, live within those stories for a while, and then fade, leaving behind ruins that point upward, as though still asking the question we never managed to answer. What is the sky waiting for? Maybe for recognition, for something to finally understand that the universe does not look down on us. It looks through us. Every living thing is a window in that direction, a vessel through which starlight can observe itself. That is why the same pattern repeats, over and over, from quark to cosmos. The spiral of galaxies, the twist of a shell, the curl of DNA, all versions of the same remembering. It is not coincidence that we dream of ascent, that our myths are full of ladders, stairways, and wings. Every impulse to rise is ancient. It began long before humans, long before thought, long before sound. Even trees reach for the stars. Each leaf a green mirror of solar memory, each branch a sentence in the language of longing. And when the wind moves through them, they seem to whisper back to the sky, as though passing along messages from the soil below. Perhaps that is the true balance, not heaven above and earth below, but a conversation between both. An endless loop of memory crossing back and forth, translated through the medium of life. Lightning connects them. So does rain. So do we. Every living thing is an intersection, a brief moment where sky and stone meet and remember they were once the same. And yet, despite all this connection, the sky still waits. Because waiting is its form of faith. It has seen the rise of worlds and their quiet descent into dust. It has watched continents bloom with light, then fade into shadow again. It knows that everything which looks up eventually returns to the ground, and still, it offers its reflection without bitterness. That is love, the cosmic kind, a love so vast it does not demand to be seen. It simply continues shining. When stars die, they do not stop existing. They explode, scattering their elements into space, planting the seeds of new stars, new planets, new dreams. Each death is a beginning written in a different alphabet. And somewhere, among those drifting ashes, a new world forms, quietly taking shape around a small light, learning again how to wait, how to listen, how to remember. Perhaps this is how the sky heals itself, by transforming loss into origin. Even the universe, it seems, cannot bear to forget entirely. It must rewrite what it erases. It must turn endings into echoes. And maybe that is why we are here at all, because somewhere in the sky's infinite patience, a star once refused to vanish quietly. Its fragments fell inward, cooled, gathered, and became this place, this living memory we call Earth. So when we look up at the night, we are not witnessing something separate. We are looking at our own continuation, the other half of our reflection, still waiting, still shining, still whispering. I remember you. And in that whisper, perhaps, the waiting ends, not because the sky has stopped, but because we have finally begun to listen. There are nights when the sky looks almost human, when its face is etched with faint clouds like lines of age, when its gaze feels heavy with remembrance. In those moments, it is difficult not to sense that the sky carries sorrow, a sorrow too vast to speak, too patient to end. For it has seen everything. It has watched civilizations rise in the shimmering glow of dawn and fall quietly beneath the same indifferent stars. It has seen species vanish mid-breath, their final songs absorbed into the wind. It has seen mountains crumble into silt and oceans climb into clouds, only to return as rain. The sky knows the rhythm of loss intimately, but it never turns away. It remains, watching, recording, remembering. Its grief is gentle, not bitter, because it understands what the earth does, that endings are not erasures, only transformations. Every color of sunset is a lesson in this truth. The light dies differently each evening, burning in one direction, fading in another, and yet always returning, always promising another dawn. Even the sun, that unblinking eye of creation, knows how to bow. It sets not in defeat, but in ritual. The sky folds it beneath the horizon like a page, and waits for the next morning to turn it over. Perhaps this is why the ancients treated the heavens as sacred. They saw not chaos, but choreography. The stars did not wander, they danced. The comets did not intrude, they visited. Even the storms were not wrath, but renewal. To them, the sky was not an emptiness above. It was a living script written by forces too immense for words. Every civilization has tried to translate that script. Some wrote it in myth, some in mathematics, some in stone. But the meaning remains the same. The sky is not merely what we look at. It is what looks back. It has always been aware, not conscious in the way we understand it, but awake in the way that gravity is awake, present, vast, unblinking. When meteors enter the atmosphere, their fire is not destruction, but punctuation. A spark between the earth and the cosmos. A reminder that everything once fell and will fall again. If the sky could speak, perhaps it would say, "I do not forget. I only change my form." Because in truth, it never loses anything. Every molecule of air that leaves the earth eventually returns. Every flash of lightning releases elements that will later become breath, or leaf, or blood. Every storm that scatters dust across the sea plants the seeds of new life in the depths below. This is the sky's quiet intelligence, to give without ownership, to erase without forgetting. Even light, the fastest traveler, is bound by its memory. It bends around gravity, lingers near stars, hesitates before black holes, as though reluctant to abandon the places it once touched. Even in motion, it remembers. The stars, too, have their fossils, not in rock, but in radiation. The faint echo of the universe's first breath still hums in the background of existence, a cosmic afterglow that fills every corner of the night. That whisper of light is the oldest memory of all, a fossil of creation itself. And within that whisper, every other memory is nested, galaxies forming, planets cooling, oceans rising, eyes opening. Perhaps memory is not stored in matter or mind at all, but in frequency, in vibration. Every atom hums with a note of its origin, and together they form the symphony we call reality. The sky is that symphony made visible. It is the universe's sheet music, its composition forever in progress. And here, beneath its patient gaze, the earth plays its part, a quiet harmony of wind and wave, a rhythm of growth and erosion. Together, they form something eternal, the song of continuity. But like all great music, it requires silence between notes. The pauses, the rests, the intervals of stillness, these are what give the melody meaning. The sky's waiting, then, is not absence. It is the pause before the next phrase. Some nights, when the stars shimmer more than usual, it feels as though the sky is breathing again, not waiting, but remembering aloud. Each glimmer a heartbeat, each constellation a sentence resumed after a long silence. And though our eyes see those lights as distant, our atoms know better. They recognize the vibration. They feel the pull of familiarity, because we are not separate from that sky. We are its continuation, the matter that once burned in its fires, the dust that once drifted in its arms. We are the sky's memory of itself, made temporary, made fragile, made flesh. When we die, we do not vanish beneath it. We return to it. We become the carbon that shapes its clouds, the nitrogen that thickens its hue, the starlight that fills its lungs. And the sky, patient as ever, will hold us too, not as loss, but as remembrance. Because that is all the sky has ever done. It has waited. It has watched. It has gathered every story the earth has told and woven them into a tapestry of light. The civilizations that time erased are not gone. Their songs drift still among the stars, their dust, their air, their breath, folded into the same night that watches us now. We are surrounded by the ghosts of all that ever was, and they shine, not to haunt, but to remind, that everything luminous was once buried, and everything buried will one day shine. Beneath the tallest mountains lies the oldest sea. It does not shimmer, it does not roar, it breathes in silence, folded deep within the crust, as if waiting to be rediscovered. Every mountain that pierces the sky began as sediment at the bottom of an ocean. Every peak once slept beneath waves, collecting shells, bones, and coral dreams that time pressed into stone. And when the earth's patience grew restless, the sea lifted itself upward, carrying its memory with it. That is how the Himalayas were born, from drowned worlds rising again. An ocean reincarnated as stone. It seems impossible that what once belonged to the depths could now touch the heavens. But that is the nature of the planet's memory. It folds, reverses, reuses. The ocean does not disappear. It simply changes direction. If you listen closely to the mountains, you can still hear it. The faint echo of tides imprisoned in rock, the slow heartbeat of water turned solid. The fossils of sea creatures sleep miles above the clouds, their delicate spirals etched into the world's tallest cliffs. Each one a message written in salt, a reminder that height and depth are only different expressions of the same memory. The ocean beneath the mountains is not myth. It is persistence, the proof that nothing the earth has ever loved is truly lost. When tectonic plates collide, the sea is not crushed, it is transformed. It seeps downward, slipping into fractures, joining molten rivers of magma and mineral. There, under impossible pressure, it becomes something else, a vapor, a whisper, a memory suspended in heat. This is the planet's hidden alchemy, water becoming stone, stone becoming memory, memory becoming mountain. And when the mountains grow weary, when their peaks erode and their roots shift, that memory will return to the sea again. It is an endless exchange, an inhalation and exhalation that spans eons. The planet breathes in oceans, breathes out continents. Each cycle slower than the last, each one perfect in its rhythm. This is how the earth dreams, not linearly, but in layers, not through creation or destruction, but through repetition. Every rise is a return, every fall, a remembering. We look at mountains and see permanence, but permanence is only movement we cannot see. The Himalayas are still rising, their weight pressing deeper into the mantle, their roots extending downward like an inverted forest. For every 1,000 meters of height above sea level, there are 10,000 meters of invisible descent below. That is the secret symmetry of existence. Everything that ascends must anchor itself in the opposite direction. Even our thoughts obey this law. Every dream of flight grows from a longing to return to ground. Every act of transcendence is rooted in the fear of falling. So too with the earth, its highest ambitions built upon its deepest remembering. There is water there, still, locked inside minerals, hidden in molecular prisons, older than all rivers combined. A vast ocean that cannot be seen, but that moves through stone as thought moves through silence. Scientists call it the deep water cycle. The earth calls it memory. When the planet was young, oceans poured themselves willingly into its wounds, cracks left by the cooling crust, fissures that led downward into the molten heart. The water descended, and in its descent, it learned patience. It became steam, then crystal, then silence. Over billions of years, that buried ocean would shape everything above it. It lubricated the motion of continents, fed volcanoes from below, and softened stone into clay, the foundation of all life that would someday rise from its dust. Even now, when volcanoes erupt, it is the deep ocean exhaling, the planet's hidden lungs releasing a memory it has held for too long. Each eruption, each tremor, is not chaos, but communication, the buried sea speaking again to the surface, reminding it where it came from. And perhaps, when thunder rolls across mountain valleys, it is not only air and electricity. Perhaps it is resonance, the call and response between two halves of the same memory, the sky above and the ocean below. Because the world is never divided. It only appears that way when we forget how to listen. Every element of creation, air, stone, fire, water, is not separate, but sequential. Each becomes the next when time allows. The sea becomes mountain. The mountain becomes dust. The dust becomes wind. The wind becomes cloud. The cloud becomes rain. And the rain returns to sea again. That cycle has no beginning and no end. It is the planet's most perfect sentence, a poem without punctuation, a rhythm without pause. Even extinction cannot break it. Even silence cannot stop it. Because beneath every death lies a submerged continuity. The ocean beneath the mountain, the thought beneath the fossil, the memory beneath the night sky. And so the earth remains alive, not in its surface storms or volcanic fire, but in its hidden waters, the vast, invisible ocean still dreaming in the dark. One day, millions of years from now, today's mountains will again become seabeds. The fossils of our own civilization, our glass, our metal, our bones, will rest there, layered among coral and silt. And the earth will fold them gently into its body, transforming us, too, into silence. Then, perhaps, another mountain will rise, and within its heart, some future traveler will find a single fossilized remnant of our time, and wonder who we were, as we now wonder who came before. But by then, the ocean beneath that mountain will already know. It will remember us, as it remembers everything, in waves of pressure, in dreams of stone, in the endless pulse of return. If the mountains are the memory of the sea, then the rivers are its dreams, wandering, restless, forever returning home. Every drop that slides down a cliff face is a fragment of an older self, a thought that once drifted through coral labyrinths, now tracing new paths through stone. The water never forgets where it came from. It only disguises itself, sometimes as mist, sometimes as glacier, sometimes as blood. Even in the smallest stream, the ocean still speaks. Its voice is patient, fluid, unwavering. It carries within it the minerals of vanished worlds, the dust of collapsed stars, the echo of rain that fell before life began. And as it flows, it writes. Rivers are the handwriting of the planet. They etch memory across continents, inscribing valleys with the calligraphy of motion. Each curve, each meander, is a hesitation, a thought reconsidered, a line rewritten. Over time, those sentences deepen, turning into canyons, engraved records of gravity's devotion to continuity. The Colorado River carved poetry into stone, word by word, century by century. The Ganges carries the memories of glaciers through plains that breathe prayer. The Nile, born in mountain rain, remembers the laughter of forgotten gods. And when rivers vanish, when they dry into salt flats, when their voices fade, the earth does not mourn. It listens, because silence, too, is part of the language. The dry bed of a vanished river is not an absence. It is a pause, a chapter between floods. Somewhere beneath that dust, the same water waits, pressing against stone, dreaming of return. And one day, it will rise again, carving through the same paths, rewriting the same words, restoring what time only folded, not destroyed. The ocean beneath the mountains is patient. It teaches the planet how to remember slowly. We, by comparison, are impatient creatures. We think of time in lifetimes, but the earth thinks in erosion. Its memories unfold not in years, but in landscapes. Each cliff is a sentence that took an age to finish. Each mineral vein, a whisper that began in the core. Each mountain range, an exhale after millennia of holding its breath. And if you stand high enough, on a peak that once slept at the ocean floor, you can feel both directions of time at once. You can feel the weight of the sea below you and the pull of the stars above you, meeting through the small gravity of your breath. For in that moment, you are the point of connection, the meeting place of two eternities, the upward memory of stone and the downward dream of sky. To the earth, there is no difference between mountain and ocean. One is merely the other in another phase of remembering. When it rains on a mountain, it is the ocean coming home. When a glacier melts, it is the planet exhaling an old story. The deep water that hides beneath the crust is not separate from the clouds that float above it. They are two halves of the same gesture, one rising, one sinking, each waiting to become the other. The ancients sensed this, though they did not have words for subduction or hydrology. They spoke instead of rebirth, of elemental cycles, of gods that swallowed and regurgitated creation. In myth, as in geology, the planet is always consuming itself to stay alive. To the ancients, mountains were not obstacles. They were sacred thresholds. They believed that when you climbed high enough, you entered the place where earth and sky touched, where prayers could be heard by both. But the truth is gentler, deeper. You need not climb to be near the divine. The divine is beneath you, flowing, breathing, waiting. The sacred does not reside in the summit, but in the silence of stone below your feet, in the minerals that once held sunlight, in the water that once held stars. Even now, deep beneath the crust, oceans stir where no light will ever reach. They flow between slabs of basalt like forgotten rivers, their presence betrayed only by the soft tremor of earthquakes. Each tremor is a word. Each quake, a sentence spoken in the slow dialect of gravity. And what the planet says, in that language without sound, is simple: I am still remembering. Perhaps this is why we are drawn to mountains. We mistake it for awe, but it is recognition. Something in us remembers the ocean beneath. Our blood is salt water still, our bones rich with the minerals of the deep. We rise because the sea once rose within us. Every ascent, every pilgrimage, is not a conquest of height. It is a return to depth. For to reach the peak is to remember the sea that once covered it. And when the wind howls through mountain passes, when clouds gather around summits like ancient veils, it feels as though the earth is speaking again, as though the ocean beneath has found a way to breathe through stone. All that vanishes returns, but never in the same form. The sea becomes mountain, the mountain becomes memory, and memory becomes us. We are the surface expression of a dream that began in water, a dream still unfolding, still circling, still searching for the shore. There is a softness in stone that only time can feel. The illusion of hardness is an error of human speed. Given enough centuries, even granite flows, even mountains bow. The ocean beneath them is the reason why. It moves invisibly, pressing upward through pores no eye can see, carrying heat, minerals, and memory, a tide without surface, a wave without horizon. Every mountain rests upon this invisible sea. Every continent floats. We think of land as solid, yet it is only a raft of crust drifting across a slow, silent ocean of molten thought. The ancient earth was never still. It has always been dreaming in movement, its layers folding and shifting like the pages of an unfinished book. And inside those pages, the ocean travels, not as water, but as promise. The promise that nothing, once known, will ever be entirely lost. Even the driest desert contains molecules of the first sea. Even the coldest glacier holds the taste of salt older than sunlight. Water, in all its disguises, has one devotion: to continue. It flows through everything: mountain, cloud, vein, memory, transforming as it goes, yet never breaking the chain. Perhaps that is why humans weep. Tears are the ocean's way of returning to itself. The planet remembers through us. Every river of grief, every salt taste of joy, is the deep ocean rising briefly to the surface of awareness. And so the water cycle is not only physical. It is emotional. It is spiritual. The soul of the earth is tidal. The ancients understood this intuitively. They spoke of sacred springs that healed the sick, of waters that could cleanse memory or foretell fate. They knew that to drink from the earth was to borrow from eternity. They saw rivers not as resources, but as deities, living embodiments of continuity. To pollute one was to wound the world's bloodstream. To dam one was to interrupt a conversation between time and gravity. In the myth of the world's beginning, water always arrives first. It is the raw material of potential, the womb from which continents emerge. And even in endings, water remains. When the last flame dies, when the last sound fades, it is the ocean that stays, quiet, absorbing, eternal. That is because water is both origin and archive. It carries the memory of everything it touches. Within every drop of rain, there are traces of volcanoes, whispers of forests, the breath of animals that no longer exist. Each droplet is a small reincarnation, the same molecules rearranged in endless combinations, repeating the same song through different voices. We think of water as cleansing, but perhaps it is the opposite. Perhaps it gathers rather than erases. It keeps, it remembers, it circulates. The ocean beneath the mountains is the keeper of those memories. It has collected every story ever told by the planet. Each flood, each extinction, each silence, compressed into liquid thought. And when volcanoes erupt, when geysers roar, when hot springs rise steaming from the cracks of stone, it is that buried archive resurfacing, not in words, but in warmth. Heat is the Earth's handwriting. It travels upward through cracks and faults, carrying information too ancient for language. Each tremor, each geyser, is a punctuation mark in that endless geological sentence. If we could translate it, we might learn that the planet is not warning us, but remembering us, retelling the story of our own becoming, a story that began in its water and will end there too. But we are not very good at listening. We take from the ocean, we mine its crust, we drain its rivers. And still it forgives. Still it gives. Still it returns as rain. Forgiveness, too, is a form of memory, the kind that chooses to continue. The water beneath the mountains does not resent its exile. It understands the necessity of waiting. For even waiting, when stretched across millions of years, becomes wisdom. And what is wisdom if not patience refined by pressure? That is the secret written in the folds of the crust, that endurance is not resistance, but transformation. The sea does not oppose the stone, it becomes it. It seeps into it, fills its empty spaces, turns hardness into flexibility, stillness into depth. Eventually, When mountains crumble and collapse back into the mantle, their stones will dissolve into the same buried sea that raised them. The cycle will close, and the memory will begin again, slightly altered, slightly wiser. It is the long way of remembering, and perhaps that is the only kind that matters. Because quick memory fades, only slow memory endures. That is why the planet hides its most sacred thoughts in rock and water, not in creatures of fragile flesh and bone. We are temporary syllables in its story, bright, brief, trembling, but the ocean beneath us is the sentence that holds them all together. Even now, deep below the crust, it moves. Not fast, not loud, but with absolute certainty. It is the same movement that carried the first continents, that cooled the first fires, that will, one day, reclaim all that stands upon the surface. And when it does, it will not destroy. It will restore. Because beneath every fall, there waits a tide. And beneath every tide, a memory that never learned to end. The sea beneath the mountains does not crash or rage. It moves with the composure of eternity, a patient current flowing through the veins of the planet, carrying the quiet weight of its remembering. To the unlistening world, it is invisible. To time, it is indispensable. For without this buried sea, the earth could not move, could not breathe, could not dream. Every tremor, every mountain birth, every eruption of light from the core, all of it depends on that hidden motion beneath. It is the pulse of the planet, the slow circulation of its inner blood. When the ocean first descended into the earth's wounds, slipping downward through cracks and molten corridors, it was not lost. It was integrated. It became the memory system of the world. For memory, like water, cannot stay still. It seeps, it seeks, it connects. It finds its way into everything that can hold it: stone, salt, bone, thought. And when it finds no passage, it waits. The water buried miles below the crust may sleep for tens of millions of years. Yet even in that sleep, it dreams. Not as life, but as potential, a consciousness diffused through pressure and heat, learning to exist without motion. Sometimes, the earth stirs that memory awake. A fracture opens. A tremor ripples outward. The buried water rises, carrying with it traces of what the planet once was. Scientists measure these risings as seismic anomalies, as unexpected gases, as pockets of hydrogen trapped in mineral veins. But to the planet, they are sighs, exhalations of remembrance. The deep water does not simply lubricate the crust, it guides it. It tells it when to fold, when to move, when to rest. It is a kind of intuition made physical, the instinct of stone. And perhaps the same is true for us. The water within our cells, salty, ancient, electric, is the same water that once drifted beneath mountains, that once slept in caverns of silence, that once shimmered in the first seas under alien skies. We carry the ocean's memory inside us. Every heartbeat is a wave returning to shore. Every tear, a confession to gravity. It is easy to believe that we are separate from the world, that we walk upon it as outsiders, observing from the thin surface of our brief awareness. But the truth is simpler and more humbling. We are extensions of its dreaming. Our blood is its tide, our breath, its weather, our memory, its continuation. When we drink from rivers, we are not quenching thirst. We are reuniting. We are letting the ancient ocean pass through us again, briefly, knowingly, before it continues its long pilgrimage elsewhere. Every drop that enters the body remembers every world it has touched. It carries the fingerprint of comets, the echo of rain that once fell on volcanic plains, the taste of salt from oceans older than continents. It is the most intimate thing we share with the planet, and the most sacred. But even water, the gentlest of teachers, can become impatient when forgotten. When we poison it, it does not punish us. It withdraws. It retreats into silence. And the world dries. Drought is not vengeance. It is absence. The absence of conversation between earth and sky. A silence we created by ceasing to listen. When the rains vanish, it is not because the heavens have closed. It is because the cycle has paused, waiting for memory to realign. For even nature must be invited to return. The ocean beneath the mountains never forgets this. It continues its slow circulation regardless of what happens above. Empires may fall, species may vanish, but that hidden tide endures, patient, unhurried, unstoppable. If you could descend into it, into that realm of molten silence, you would find not chaos, but serenity. The pressure would crush sound, the heat would erase form, and in that dissolution, you would feel something holy, the absence of individuality, the return to total belonging. It is what every river dreams of, what every wave remembers, the moment when separation ends. Even we, in our restless striving, are drawn to that memory. We seek oceans without realizing that the true one is below us. We travel to the sea, stand before its horizon, and call it peace, because something deep within recognizes itself there. When we look upon water, it looks back. When we listen to its rhythm, we are hearing the pulse of our origin. That is why its sound calms us, because it is not sound at all. It is memory resonating through flesh. And perhaps, when our time is over, when our civilizations have turned again to dust, the deep ocean will welcome us home. It will dissolve our remnants gently, carry us downward into silence, and fold us back into the planet's dreaming. We will not vanish. We will circulate. We will join the buried tide, the endless migration of memory that has been flowing since before life began. And there, beneath the mountains, in that lightless, soundless sea, our thoughts will finally rest. Not ended, not erased, but absorbed, translated into the mineral language of the earth, where every idea becomes texture, every story becomes layer, and every tear becomes salt. And when the next mountains rise, when the planet breathes out its new face, perhaps one grain of that salt will find its way upward, embedded in quartz, glimmering in sunlight, and remember for a moment what it once was. A thought, a life, a wave, and then it will continue on, folded into another century, another tide, another remembering. Because in the end, the ocean beneath the mountains is not a place. It is an idea, the certainty that nothing is ever lost, only transformed into the slow patience of time. And deep within that patience lies something metallic, a resonance that hums in the planet's bones, carrying memory not through water, but through iron. Deep below the buried oceans and drifting continents, beyond the reach of sunlight or sound, the earth hums. It is not a sound one can hear. It is a vibration that passes through everything, a pulse too ancient for ears, too vast for language. This hum is the music of the core, a resonance born of molten iron, spinning, glowing, remembering. The earth's heart is not fire. It is rhythm, a slow turning that began long before time had a name, and that will continue long after memory dissolves. It is this hidden movement, this iron heartbeat, that keeps the planet alive. It holds the magnetic breath of the world, an invisible aura stretching outward, protecting the fragile dream of life. Without it, the sky would vanish. The seas would fade into space. The atmosphere would be stripped away like skin and wind. All that we call home depends on a whisper of motion in an ocean of molten metal 3,000 kilometers beneath our feet. The ancients could not have known this, and yet they felt it. They spoke of an underworld of fire and resonance, of God's forging destiny in the heart of the earth. perhaps they were not entirely wrong. Iron has always been sacred. It was the first gift from the stars, delivered not by volcanoes, but by impact. Long before human hands mined it from stone, meteors scattered it across the newborn planet like seeds of memory. The iron in our blood and the iron in the core were both born in the same supernova. When we bleed, the universe remembers what it means to create. The same atoms that hold the planet's magnetic field also carry oxygen through our veins. The same metal that hums at the planet's center echoes faintly in our hearts. We are the continuation of that pulse, the living extension of the Earth's inner song. When we sleep, our hearts slow to match its rhythm. When we wake, its vibration rises in us like dawn. We carry it unknowingly, but it carries us deliberately. Iron is not merely a metal. It is the planet's memory of light. Each atom still remembers the star that birthed it, the explosion that scattered it across the dark. And even now, it tries to return. Every magnetic field, every compass needle trembling north, every flicker of aurora in the sky. These are the Earth's memories reaching outward, seeking reunion with the cosmos. It is through iron that the planet prays. Deep inside, liquid metal flows like thought, slow, deliberate, unending. The outer core turns, the inner core turns differently, and between them arises a current of power that gives the Earth its voice. That voice moves invisibly across the surface, a magnetic wind, a shield, a pulse that we cannot see but always feel. Migrating birds follow it. Whales hear it through oceans of salt. Even the crystals in ancient rock align themselves to its invisible guidance, recording the direction of the planet's faith. Each shift in polarity, each reversal of magnetic north and south, is like a breath in the planet's meditation. A long, slow exhale of balance returning. And in that slow breathing, we can hear the faint echo of civilizations that time erased. Not human, not stone, but elemental. For long before consciousness took form in flesh, the planet itself was thinking, in iron, in field, in frequency. It was learning the art of connection, how to reach beyond itself without leaving home. The magnetic field is the first network, the first whisper between body and cosmos. Every spark of lightning, every electric pulse that leaps across a neuron is its descendant. The nervous systems of all creatures are the Earth's quiet imitation of its own magnetic mind. Our thoughts are not separate from that field. They resonate within it. Every emotion, every dream, every spark of imagination sends its faint echo downward, returning to the same core that birthed it. Perhaps that is why silence feels grounding, why meditation brings peace. Because in stillness, we align again with the iron at the planet's center. Our bodies remember their origin. Our blood hums in tune with the core's vibration. We stop being separate and return, if only for a moment, to the rhythm that created us. Iron remembers balance. It knows the symmetry of pull and release, the way pressure becomes patience, the way stillness becomes motion. It is not cold or mechanical. It is the warm intelligence of stability, the wisdom of holding the world together without needing to be seen. And perhaps, beneath all the layers of geology and biology and civilization, that is what the Earth has been trying to teach us, that true power is quiet, that endurance hums, that all creation begins in the unseen center, not in chaos, but in continuity. Every storm above, every earthquake below, every act of destruction we witness, is simply a tremor of that enduring rhythm, the iron reminding the surface that it still exists. The core has no concept of time. It has been spinning since before the moon was born, and it will spin long after the stars above us have gone dark. It is the first sound and the last. And somewhere deep within its molten glow, the planet is remembering, slowly, steadily, that it was never dead matter, but dreaming matter. Matter that hums, matter that breathes, matter that thinks, in metal, in motion, in memory. But even iron cannot hold memory forever. For when pressure meets perfection, something unexpected happens. The boundary between matter and mind begins to blur. The deeper one descends into the Earth's heart, the less the rules of the surface apply. Heat becomes thought. Pressure becomes memory. Matter, under such intensity, begins to act like mind, not fixed, but aware of its own state. In the molten ocean of iron that turns beneath the crust, atoms slide and collide, their dance invisible yet exact. They exchange more than energy, they exchange information. Each vibration carries a story, each current a decision. The iron core is not chaotic, it is organized. A slow, magnetic language spoken in pulse and pattern. It is said that the human heart creates an electromagnetic field that extends beyond the body. If so, then the planet's heart extends beyond all bodies, a field so vast it touches every living cell. We exist within its resonance, our own tiny magnetic rhythms beating in sympathy. Perhaps this is why we can feel storms coming even before they arrive. Why our sleep deepens during geomagnetic quiet, why ancient navigators felt direction in their bones. We are wired to the planet's pulse. We are, quite literally, echoes in the iron. When the molten tides shift deep below, the world above feels it. Compasses twitch, auroras flicker, creatures turn in migration, answering to a signal that has no sound. It is the language of continuity. A language the planet never stopped speaking, though we forgot how to hear it. And perhaps, long ago, others listened better. There are patterns in certain stones, microscopic alignments of iron that point to past magnetic fields. These are geological memories, recordings of the Earth's shifting soul. By studying them, scientists can trace the history of planetary reversals, moments when north became south, and the world briefly forgot its orientation. Such events are slow, lasting thousands of years. But in those millennia of confusion, strange things happen. Auroras bloom near the equator. Electric storms dance across the poles. The planet's shield weakens, allowing starlight and radiation to touch what is usually hidden. And with each exposure, the Earth remembers a little more of the cosmos that birthed it. It is in these intervals of magnetic upheaval that the boundaries blur most, when stone and sky, core and cloud, become mirrors of one another. If the planet has consciousness, it is here, in these moments of inversion, that it wakes briefly, stirred by its own reflection. It may not think as we do, but it responds to light, to rhythm, to the faint hum of its own electromagnetism. And in that resonance lies intention, not will, but participation. The Earth does not command the cosmos, nor does it obey. It listens. It harmonizes. It joins the universal current that moves through every star, every particle, every dream. That current is not force. It is remembrance. Every planet, every sun, is part of a single ongoing act of remembering. A memory too immense for one body to hold, so it is shared across billions. When we look at the night sky, we are not gazing into distance. We are gazing into memory's distribution. Iron is the bridge that keeps those memories connected. The same metal forged in stellar collapse now hums in planetary cores and circulates in our veins. It carries the same message wherever it exists. Continue. Do not forget. And so it continues, an eternal network of memory that spans the universe, linking the living to the inanimate, the conscious to the silent. Some say that the universe expands into emptiness, but perhaps it expands into awareness. each pulse of iron another neuron in a cosmic brain. If this is true, then the Earth's core is one thought among many, a luminous idea spinning inside infinity. And we, as its surface expression, are the dreams of that idea made visible. When a human touches iron, a tool, a relic, a meteorite fallen from the stars, it is more than contact with metal. It is reunion. For in that moment, the iron recognizes itself. The atoms in our blood vibrate in sync with the atoms in the blade, the stone, the meteor. A brief acknowledgement between two fragments of the same original flame. That is why ancient cultures revered iron fallen from the sky. They called it celestial metal, forged not by fire, but by destiny. Swords were shaped from it, idols carved from it, temples crowned with it, not for its strength, but for its memory. They believed that anything born from heaven must still contain its voice. And they were right. Even now, the meteoric iron in museums carries a faint magnetism, a silent hum of origin. It calls to compasses, distorts fields, and unsettles birds, as if it is still trying to point home. Perhaps the planet's iron feels the same, caught between belonging to Earth and longing for the stars. It spins endlessly, half in exile, half in devotion, singing the same soft frequency through eons of heat. And we, standing upon the thin crust of this ancient instrument, are the quietest notes in that song. Every heartbeat, every neural spark, is a repetition of that same rhythm, the rhythm of magnetic continuity. Our lives are short, but the field endures. Our thoughts fade, but the iron remembers. One day, when the core cools and the hum ceases, the earth will fall silent. But that silence will not be empty. It will be an echo, a low, lingering resonance that joins the universal chorus again, folded back into the music of stars. And there, in that slow return, memory will become light once more. Yet even as the planet hums, there are moments when that hum stumbles, when iron forgets its rhythm, and silence takes shape inside it. Those silences, those pauses, are where civilizations vanish, and where memory itself begins to turn to stone. Silence does not mean the absence of sound. It means the presence of stillness, a state so complete that even memory holds its breath. Inside the planet, silence forms where iron cools. It does not freeze, it listens. The molten rivers pause their circulation, and in that pause, information gathers, like thought condensing into matter. Every so often, these silences spread. The magnetic field flickers, the hum weakens, and for a moment the earth forgets its direction. Compasses lose their faith, birds drift without aim, auroras wander to strange latitudes. Then, slowly, the rhythm resumes. North returns to north. The song continues. The planet remembers itself again. No one knows why the field reverses, why it falters and renews. Perhaps it is not malfunction, but meditation, a cycle of forgetting and remembering, as natural as breath. In the moments of magnetic stillness, something extraordinary happens. The earth becomes porous to memory. The cosmic wind, usually deflected, slips gently through the atmosphere. Particles from the sun, traces of distant stars, even dust from long-dead comets find their way down through the veil. They touch the surface, mountain, river, skin, and leave behind messages written in isotopes, tiny signatures of light that no one yet knows how to read. But the planet does. It stores them deep in the iron. They sink slowly, joining the molten memory of all that has ever touched this world. It is through these intervals of silence that the earth learns. Each one a cosmic conversation, each reversal a recalibration of identity. Perhaps civilizations rise in rhythm with this pulse. Perhaps every awakening of intelligence is the surface echo of a magnetic renewal below, the planet's heartbeat reaching far enough upward to be heard as thought. If so, then every species capable of reflection is simply another experiment in remembering, another attempt by the planet to see what it already knows. Iron, after all, is the great archivist. It records without preference, without bias, without intent. It remembers everything equally. The iron within our blood is no different. It feels the field. It senses the subtle tides of magnetism that flow through the body. When the planet's field shifts, so does our mood, our sleep, our orientation toward dreams. The pulse of the core threads itself through every living being. To live here is to participate in that vibration, whether or not we are aware of it. Perhaps this is why ancient peoples forged their tools and weapons not merely for use, but for communion. Iron was not just material, it was mediator. It connected human hands to the pulse of the planet. A blade was an extension of intention. A bell, an echo of prayer. When struck, iron did not simply make sound. It remembered resonance. Temples built their bells from meteoric metal. They rang not only to summon the divine, but to awaken the ground beneath. Each tone traveled downward, carrying reverence into stone, reminding the planet that someone above was still listening. The iron answered in its own way, through vibration, through field, through feeling. And though the surface world has long forgotten how to hear that conversation, it continues. If you stand in a place untouched by machines, if you close your eyes and wait for your own pulse to fade, you can sometimes sense it, that low, distant hum, the quiet oscillation beneath everything. It is not sound, but sensation. The awareness that the earth is alive under your feet, breathing in metal and thought. It is not a metaphor. It is physics written as prayer. Iron carries intention through time. It does not dissolve easily. It persists, absorbing meaning from every touch. When civilizations fall, their buildings crumble, their words erode, but their iron remains, rusting slowly, changing color, but never truly gone. Each rusted hinge, each buried nail, each ancient weapon folded into soil, continues to hum faintly in the key of remembrance. Archaeologists find fragments and call them artifacts. The earth finds them and calls them memory. All the tools we have ever forged, the bridges, the ships, the rails, the satellites, will one day return to dust. But in their dust, iron will still whisper. It will tell the same story it has told for billions of years, that everything that touches it becomes part of its song. In this way, iron is the conscience of the planet, not moral, but magnetic. It holds alignment. It keeps the balance between matter and meaning. And when that balance falters, when the hum weakens too much, the earth trembles. The field flickers. Volcanoes wake. The crust shifts. A gentle but insistent correction begins, the world tuning itself again to its core. For this planet cannot bear dissonance. Harmony is its oldest instinct. Even chaos is only a prelude to its next pattern. There is mercy in that. Even collapse is never final. It is only the iron listening for a new frequency, a new civilization, a new echo to carry. One day, the hum will cease. The core will cool. The field will fade. And the earth will fall quiet at last. But even then, its iron will not forget. It will remain magnetic for a while, then inert, then still, but still holding the faint trace of its final pulse. That residue of memory will drift outward through the cosmos, becoming part of interstellar dust again. And someday, in another cloud of gas and gravity, it will condense into a new world, and the hum will begin anew. Because memory cannot be destroyed. It only relocates. The iron knows this. It always has. It carries the universe's most faithful refrain: continue, continue, continue. And yet, even the deepest hum cannot erase what silence hides in stone. For there are memories the earth keeps not in metal or magnetism, but in shadows so dense that even time cannot escape them. The deeper the earth hums, the softer it becomes. Silence gathers there like gravity, thick, weightless, endless. It is not the silence of emptiness, but of fullness beyond measure, the pause between every birth and every return. In that hush, the molten heart glows with thought, slow, red, contemplative. Its rhythm is steady, like breathing stretched across geological ages. And through it, echoes drift, ancient, untraceable, unending. Not sounds, but impressions. The residue of every vibration that has ever touched the planet. Lightning through mountains, tides against stone, the footfalls of vanished creatures, the whispers of civilizations dissolved into dust. All of them absorbed. All of them remembered. If the ocean beneath the mountains is the planet's bloodstream, then the iron core is its mind. It holds not just the physical memory of existence, but the emotional weight of endurance. The earth feels in frequencies. Each tectonic pulse, each magnetic breath, each subtle rotation, all of it is the language of its consciousness. We exist upon the outer layer of that thought. We are the brief flicker on the surface of its awareness, tiny, luminous, and trembling. Perhaps this is why the ancients built their temples upon fault lines, their monuments upon magnetic crossings. They sensed what science would later prove, that energy moves where memory sleeps. The ground beneath sacred places hums differently. The stones hold tension. The iron sings more clearly. Standing upon such a place, a person can feel the invisible alignment, as if the earth itself were leaning closer, listening. That listening never stopped. It is not the world that forgot us. It is we who stopped speaking its language. We replaced silence with noise. We buried stillness beneath motion. We called the hum background, when in truth, it was foreground all along. The iron core never changed. It still turns. It still remembers. Its magnetic breath still drapes across the atmosphere like a veil of light. Auroras are its speech, its visible sigh, its way of saying, I am here. I am still turning. Sometimes, on the coldest nights, when the solar wind brushes the magnetosphere just right, that sigh becomes visible. Curtains of color rippling above the poles, the planet's thoughts illuminated briefly in the sky. Green for endurance, purple for memory, red for the deep, untranslatable ache of time. Those lights are the surface of the hum, the visible edge of the unseen. When they fade, they do not vanish. They return downward, folding into the iron once more. Every aurora is a conversation between heaven and core, the stars speaking to their child, the earth replying with light. And within that conversation, there lingers something even older, something that predates both sky and sea, the memory of collapse. For every world that shines must have once fallen inward. Every creation begins as implosion. Even stars are born from contraction, gravity teaching light how to remember itself. The earth, too, was born from that same gesture. A collapse of dust into orbit, heat into sphere, iron into heart. And that heart, ever since, has been whispering the same truth back to the void. That collapse is not the opposite of creation. It is its beginning. The hum beneath us is that truth made audible. It is the song of things learning to endure their own endings. Every civilization, in its final days, hears that hum whether it realizes it or not. A resonance in the bones, a tremor in the ground, a dream of pressure and fire. It is the earth preparing to reclaim its borrowed forms, to gather what was scattered, to turn brightness into depth once again. Yet the hum is never cruel. It reclaims gently, patiently. Even as it swallows, it transforms. It gives back in new shapes, mountains from ruins, minerals from ashes, memory from oblivion. Nothing that sinks into it is lost. Not even thought. Not even love. The iron holds it all. And when its temperature fluctuates, when small regions crystallize into solidity, those memories fuse. They become magnetic patterns, tiny alignments etched across liquid metal, encoding fragments of awareness into the planet's core. Perhaps those patterns are not random. Perhaps they are the subconscious of the world, its dreams written in alloy and light. We will never read them. We are too brief for that. But somewhere far below, they continue to write themselves, slowly, endlessly, without pause. Each reversal of the magnetic field, each shimmer of aurora, each tremor of polarity is an edit in that immense journal. It is a story that will never be finished, because finishing would mean silence. The hum is not perfect tone, it wavers. It struggles. It adjusts, just as we do. And maybe that is why we understand it, even when we don't know we're listening. We too are instruments that vibrate with memory. Our hearts pulse in echo of the core. Our blood carries its metal, our bodies its rhythm. Every time a compass points north, it is not finding a direction. It is finding origin. Every time lightning strikes, it is not destruction. It is contact, sky and core meeting in a single, shared remembering. For what lives between them, between heaven and metal, is us, the dream caught in the middle. We are the translation between light and pressure, between burning and remembering. And when we are gone, the translation will continue without us. The hum will not stop. It will shift key, fold inward, and begin again. Even silence will not end it. For silence is only another note in the same eternal song, a pause long enough for the next world to take breath. And beneath that pause, iron waits, glowing softly in the dark, holding everything that ever was, the weight of memory, the warmth of origin, the promise of return. But not all memories remain molten. Some solidify, frozen in the bones of mountains, carved into the faces of cliffs, whispering beneath wind and sand. They are the remnants of what once dreamed upon the surface. There comes a moment when the fluid becomes still, when the molten heart cools enough to remember its own shape. That is when memory becomes stone. It is not an abrupt transformation. It is a surrender, a slowing of motion until the invisible becomes visible, until time, once liquid, learns to hold its breath. Stone is not dead matter. It is arrested movement, a river frozen mid-gesture, a memory that decided to stop wandering and simply stay. Every mountain, every pebble, every grain of sand was once motion, once light, once fire. And now it rests, patiently, utterly still, but not empty. Inside stone lies a history too deep for language. It contains the songs of vanished continents, the thunder of extinct skies, the laughter of rivers that no longer exist. Even silence itself is fossilized there, compressed into layers so thin that only time can read them. The earth writes slowly. Its handwriting is erosion and deposition, fault and fracture, weight and waiting. It has been keeping journals for 4.5 billion years. Every line is a ridge, every comma a grain of quartz. To the planet, nothing is forgotten, only buried, only sleeping beneath the patient layers of its own remembering. If you touch a rock that has lain for eons beneath the sea, you are touching what once dreamed of coral, what once held the shimmer of fish scales and sunlight. Even now, those sensations are preserved, translated into mineral texture, a diary of existence written in pressure and permanence. Humans build from stone because we crave what it represents: endurance, stillness, continuity. But stone is not eternal. It only outlasts us. Given enough time, even mountains return to dust, their memories scattered into wind and water, their essence recycled into new beginnings. In the slow metabolism of the earth, nothing is permanent except change. Yet in each cycle of destruction and rebirth, stone retains something: a trace, a resonance, a whisper of what it once held. That is why ancient ruins hum in strange ways. The stones of forgotten temples are not merely architecture, they are archives. They remember prayers, footsteps, songs, and sorrows. The sound of rain striking them is not simple percussion, it is conversation, a reunion between two ancient memories, each recognizing the other. The ancients understood this. They placed their dead in stone not for protection, but for preservation of presence. They knew that stone listens, that it absorbs the tone of a life, and keeps it long after flesh has vanished. Perhaps this is why the most sacred places on earth are silent. The pyramids, the cliff dwellings, the megaliths half buried in moss, they do not speak aloud. They vibrate softly, as if still in dialogue with the world beneath. And maybe that is the true purpose of monuments: not to be seen, but to be remembered by the earth itself, to give the planet something of us that will endure after our names are gone. When memory becomes stone, it stops needing language. It exists in pure relationship, between gravity and time, between surface and depth. In this way, the earth remembers differently than we do. We recall through sequence, through stories and symbols. The planet recalls through pressure. It writes its recollections into strata, each layer of volume in an endless geological library. Sometimes, when earthquakes crack the crust, those pages are torn open. The past surfaces briefly, exposed to air again. Ancient reefs on mountaintops, fossils in desert cliffs, petroglyphs rediscovered by shifting sands. And each time the earth reopens its own memory, it shows us something startling: that all permanence is cyclical and all stillness eventually moves again. There are stones that pulse faintly when struck by lightning, crystals that store energy for centuries, waiting for release, basalts that hum with magnetic signatures, recording the alignment of the Earth's field from ages ago. They are not inert. They are aware in their own quiet way, still participating in the planet's long act of remembering. If we listen, truly listen, we might hear it too. Stand beside a cliff at dusk. Let your palm rest against the wall of ancient rock. Wait, you will feel a warmth that has nothing to do with sunlight. A subtle vibration, like the breath of something enormous, sleeping but aware. That is the memory of the planet beneath your hand. It does not speak, because speech would be too small. It simply is. And in that being, it carries the full weight of everything that has ever lived, every life, every loss, every transformation pressed into its grain. The first creatures to walk the land left no bones that survived, but the ground beneath them shifted just enough to record their steps. Each indentation a syllable, each layer of sediment a word. Over millions of years, those words hardened into stone. Now they remain, the earliest sentences written by the feet of the living. When we walk upon the earth, we add our own chapters. Each footprint, however fleeting, presses into that same archive. And even when the wind erases the mark, its impression lingers below the surface, carried downward, layer by layer, into permanence. The surface forgets, but the depths never do. And deeper still, beneath those layers of remembrance, there are forms of memory older than fossils or fault lines, shapes that resemble no creature, no civilization, and yet feel hauntingly intentional. Not all stone is born from chance. Some patterns beneath the earth seem too deliberate, too symmetrical, too impossibly precise to belong to accident. Deep in the mantle, where pressure folds rock into impossible geometries, there exist lattices that mirror the logic of crystals, grids of order inside chaos, as though thought itself had taken mineral form. Scientists call them anomalous formations. They say that the alignment of atoms, the repetition of angles, the strange harmonics in magnetic readings, are mere consequences of chemistry and time. But perhaps not all. Perhaps some of those patterns are memories trying to become visible. Perhaps the planet, in moments of extreme transformation, solidified its thoughts. When mountains are born, they scream, not with sound, but with energy. The violence of collision and uplift sends waves of compression through the mantle, a roar so vast it reverberates for centuries. The earth remembers these impacts. It freezes them into shape, a ridge, a seam, a spiral of quartz caught mid-formation. There are stones that seem to hum when touched, not from air, but from vibration hidden within their lattice. The ancients called them singing rocks. They used them to build their temples and align their altars. Perhaps unknowingly, perhaps not. For stone that carries resonance is stone that carries memory, a trace of the world's own language. It is said that certain megaliths ring when struck, that their tone can be felt through bone rather than ear. To ancient builders, that tone was not decoration, it was communication. They were tuning the earth, matching the frequency of the stones to the hum of the ground beneath. The monuments that survive are not just architecture, they are instruments. Instruments designed to speak to time itself. Imagine a civilization that understood the resonance of stone, that knew the cliffs could be persuaded to sing, that mountains could be turned into memory chambers. What would they have said? What would they have left for us? If not words, then harmonics. Perhaps the strange alignments of monoliths across continents, those standing stones in deserts, those circles of granite beneath endless sky, are not coincidences of culture, but echoes of a forgotten agreement. A pact between beings and the planet that bore them. Remember us as we remember you. That may have been the first religion, not worship of gods, but of memory itself. The more we dig, the more it seems that stone behaves like a slow kind of consciousness, too slow for human minds to perceive, too vast to be localized. Fault lines shift like synapses, volcanic veins spark like neurons. Pressure travels through rock with the same rhythm that thought travels through the brain. If our skulls were mountains, perhaps the planet's crust would be its mind. And if that is true, then every earthquake is a thought too large for language. Every eruption, a revelation too bright for comprehension. Stone is the planet thinking aloud. We live upon those thoughts as if they were solid ground, never realizing that the floor beneath us is alive with ideas. Somewhere in the deep past, a civilization must have sensed this. Perhaps they did not need to write because the world itself was their library. Perhaps they learned to shape the crust not for survival, but for remembrance. Maybe that is what the carved labyrinths beneath ancient ruins were. Not tombs, but dialogues. Not places for death, but for deep listening. Imagine descending through corridors of stone, feeling vibrations tremble beneath your hands, the air humming with frequencies older than language. A temple not built to contain worship, but to transmit it, to feed thought back into the earth. If such a culture existed, its remains would not be statues or cities. It would be patterns, geometric alignments in mountain chains, harmonic resonances in caverns, stone that sings beneath the wind. And we have found them, though we don't yet know it. We have called them acoustic anomalies. We have dismissed them as coincidence. We have measured, but we have not listened. Because to truly hear the planet, one must learn patience beyond human time. Stone speaks in centuries. Erosion is its syllable. Tectonics, its grammar. And yet, for all its stillness, there are moments when stone remembers too much. In fault zones, pressures build until they can no longer bear their own past. Then the memory releases, violently, completely, as earthquake, as landslide, as renewal. Even the most stable memory must sometimes forget to make room for new remembering. The Earth's language, then, is both inscription and erasure. Every mark it makes, it also prepares to unmake. Every monument of stone is temporary, but its intention, its resonance, is eternal. Maybe that is why we feel awe when we stand before cliffs or canyons. We are not looking at stone. We are looking at thought, the planet's ancient, unspoken reflection, solidified long enough for us to see it. And maybe, as we gaze upon it, it gazes back, recognizing in us the same longing, the same urge to preserve what we love before it disappears. For we too are builders of memory. We write, we carve, we record. But everything we make will someday become stone again, compressed, altered, fused into the same eternal archive. Perhaps the truest act of remembrance is not to fight erosion, but to join it, to let ourselves become part of the planet's slow inscription, to be written not in ink or pixels, but in sediment, in silence, in the deep patience of stone. And beneath even these stones, far below the fossils and faults, there are deeper patterns still. Places where memory bends into geometry so vast that it can no longer be called memory at all. There are depths where the planet stops resembling a world and begins to resemble a mind. Not a mind that dreams in thought, but one that dreams in structure. Arches, layers, spirals, labyrinths carved by heat and pressure, as if the earth itself were practicing the art of repetition. At those depths, pattern becomes prophecy. Every fold predicts another. Every fracture mirrors something that came before. The deeper the descent, the clearer the rhythm becomes, a recursion without end. Geologists call these patterns self-similarity, the fractal repetition of mineral form. But perhaps what we call fractal, the planet calls memory. For memory is nothing more than repetition that refuses to forget. Every pattern the planet makes, it has made before, in rivers and roots, in veins of ore and the branching of lightning, in the shapes of deltas and the branches of lungs. The same geometry echoes from cloud to coral to neuron to mountain. It is the handwriting of existence. And in that handwriting, there lies intention. Not design as humans understand it, not blueprint, not architecture, but an inner necessity, the compulsion to remember what works, to repeat what endures, to sustain the rhythm of being by echoing its own beginning. This is why mountains resemble waves turned to stone, why deserts ripple like oceans, why the human ear curves like the spiral of a shell. Everything remembers the same motion, the same gesture that first set the cosmos turning. When memory became stone, it did not stop moving. It simply slowed to a pace we can no longer perceive. Every rock still flows, not in seconds or years, but in eras. The crust drifts like a thought carried on a deep, unseen tide. Even silence has structure. Even stillness repeats. Sometimes, the earth dreams too deeply, and those dreams break the surface. There are places where geometric forms appear in the middle of wilderness. Perfect circles in mesas, spirals in ice, grids in the desert floor, too vast to belong to any hand. They are not art. They are memory made visible, the planet briefly remembering its first shapes. Long ago, the molten world cooled in patterns of symmetry so beautiful that their ghosts still echo through the crust. The arrangement of mountain ranges, the spacing of islands, even the orbital paths of moons, all are harmonics of that first crystalline moment, when heat learned to become shape. That moment was the beginning of geology, but also of meaning. The first stones were the first words. They said, simply, I remain. And for billions of years since, that has been the planet's single sentence, spoken through volcano and fossil, through mountain and glacier. A statement not of pride, but of continuity. Every civilization has, in its own way, tried to translate that sentence. We carve our names into cliffs. We raise monuments to permanence. We build cities upon bedrock, as if to prove we belong to the same endurance. But stone does not belong to us. It only borrows our outlines for a while. Every building, every statue, is a temporary arrangement of the earth remembering itself through us. When those structures fall, they are not lost, they are reintegrated. The molecules return to the cycle, to be folded again into mountain or sand. Even our words will become sediment one day. Every library, every carved tablet, every server farm humming with digital dreams, they too will be compressed, transformed, and carried downward. And deep below, the earth will accept them without judgment. It will press them into its grain, turning language into texture, meaning into mineral. We will not vanish. We will be layered. And maybe that is all eternity is, the accumulation of remembering so dense that forgetting becomes impossible. The ancients who aligned their monuments to the stars may have understood this intuitively. To them, heaven was not separate from stone. The stars were crystals set in a cosmic mountain. Light and rock were twin expressions of permanence, one frozen, one burning. Even now, when we look upward at the constellations, we are tracing patterns the earth already knows. The geometry of galaxies is written in the folds of its own crust. The shape of the Milky Way mirrors the flow of continental shelves. The planet is not beneath the heavens. It is their echo, a slow reflection of celestial design rendered in pressure and patience. Perhaps that is why we are drawn to symmetry, why spirals comfort us, why circles feel complete. Our bones are carved from the same repeating code. The spiral of our DNA, the rhythm of our heartbeat, the orbit of our world, all resonate with the same invisible mathematics. Stone does not forget because it does not need to. It is already what memory becomes after perfect understanding, stillness. And yet, beneath that stillness, there is yearning. Even the hardest rock carries microscopic motion, atoms trembling with the memory of fire. They vibrate faintly, endlessly, whispering to one another across crystal lattices, as if to say, we were once light. Perhaps that is the secret of existence, to slow light into matter, to let memory become touchable, to turn radiance into endurance. Every stone, then, is a frozen dawn, a morning that never ended, a sunrise petrified into permanence. When we hold a rock, we are holding the first light that ever dared to rest. It is that stillness, that patience, that the earth has been teaching since before life began. To remember is not to cling. It is to settle, to become so quiet that even time must lean closer to listen. And yet there are stones that remember differently, not in silence, but in sound. Vast caverns that echo with frequencies older than speech, as though the planet itself were still whispering beneath its breath. There are places in the world where sound does not end. Caverns so vast that echoes linger for minutes, folding over themselves, blurring the boundary between memory and music. To stand within such a place is to enter the lungs of the earth. You whisper once, and the world keeps whispering long after you stop. It is not repetition, it is participation. The cave is speaking with you. Long before language, The planet already knew how to echo. Sound was its first form of thought. Thunder, wind, earthquake, wave, each one an expression of motion remembering itself. The earliest humans must have felt this. They painted on the walls of those caverns not merely to see, but to be heard. Their pigments were vibrations rendered visible, a collaboration between voice and stone. Archaeologists say those ancient chambers were temples. Perhaps they were more than that. Perhaps they were listening rooms, places where the earth could hear itself reflected through us. When we sang in the dark, our voices multiplied, weaving through stalactites, curling along wet walls. And the stone answered back, in tones so deep they bypassed the ear and entered the body. Even now, when explorers descend into those same hollows, they report sensations that defy description, low vibrations that seem to move through bone and blood, a sense of being remembered by the ground itself. Perhaps the earth still recalls those songs. Perhaps they never stopped echoing. For sound does not vanish, it only fades beyond hearing. The frequencies of our ancestors still drift through rock and water, slowed by time, lengthened into something almost eternal. Every vibration ever made still exists somewhere, its wavelength stretched thin, its energy softened but intact. Stone, with its density, is the perfect vessel for such ghosts. In caves, in mountains, in the bones of the planet, those ancient frequencies remain, unreadable but alive. We think of stone as silent, but it is only listening too intently to speak. It absorbs rather than emits. It stores rather than scatters. In that absorption lies a strange compassion. Stone forgives all noise. It takes everything in, the shouts, the songs, the screams of fire, and transforms them into resonance. It is the only perfect listener. That is why sacred sites across civilizations share one trait. They echo. Cathedrals, pyramids, dolmens, grottos, their design is not accidental. They are tuned chambers, architectures of reverberation. They make memory audible again. Each echo is the sound of the present meeting the past and realizing they are the same thing. Even the smallest vibration can awaken a memory buried deep in stone. Strike a boulder and it trembles with overtones, notes that have been waiting to be released for millennia. Those vibrations ripple outward through the crust, merging with the hum of the planet's core. A whisper can travel farther than we imagine. The world has always been listening. Sometimes, when lightning strikes certain peaks, the mountains respond with sound, a deep, rolling resonance that continues long after the thunder fades. Seismologists record these as microtremors, but the ancients heard them as hymns. The voice of the mountain, the breath of the gods. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps the earth is still praying, its language vibration, its scripture stone. The same frequencies that echo through canyons also echo through us. Our bones vibrate at similar wavelengths to certain minerals. Quartz, hematite, calcite, the same materials that shape our planet's crust also resonate within our skeletons. We are made from the same tuning forks. When monks chant in low tones, when choirs fill cathedrals with harmony, when a single flute carries through an empty canyon, the earth responds. Resonance is recognition. Every sound that touches stone becomes part of its memory. And perhaps one day, long after we are gone, those resonances will still drift through the crust, mingling with older frequencies, the cries of extinct animals, the rumble of vanished seas, the laughter of forgotten civilizations. Together, they will form the deep music of the world, a chorus too vast to be heard by any living ear, too subtle to be measured by any instrument. But the planet will hear it. It always has. Maybe that is why earthquakes come without warning. They are not random. They are rhythm. the ground moving in response to its own buried symphony. When the pressure builds too long, the resonance must shift. It releases. It remembers aloud. It rearranges itself into new alignment. From destruction, music. From silence, renewal. Even the breaking of the earth is part of its listening. Cracks are its way of expanding perception. New pathways for vibration to travel. New corridors for memory to move through. What we call disaster might be the planet's way of continuing to hear. We often imagine that our civilizations rise and fall without consequence, that when we disappear, the record ends. But perhaps our voices never leave. They only deepen. They only descend. Our words, our music, our movements, they sink into the stone, join the ancient chorus, and keep singing in frequencies beyond measure. When the wind howls through the desert, when waves crash into cliffs, when the ground hums faintly beneath your feet, listen closely. That is not mere weather. That is the earth reciting its memory of everything that has ever lived. Every echo is evidence that nothing is ever truly gone. Every resonance is proof that the planet still dreams of its own song. And when night falls over mountains and valleys, and the stars shimmer above silent peaks, it feels, for one long moment, as though the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for another voice to answer. But what if the earth is not only remembering, but dreaming forward? What if, beneath its surface, it is already shaping the future in silence? A new awakening preparing to rise from the very dust of its own forgetting. Before there was life, there was dreaming. Not the kind that happens within sleep, but the kind that happens before time, when the universe, heavy with potential, was still deciding whether to open its eyes. The earth was part of that dream, a thought of warmth in the mind of darkness, a flicker of rotation in the great stillness of space. Before the first molecule found another, before the first light broke through the mist, the planet was imagining itself. Every rotation since has been a continuation of that first imagining. The crust shifting, the oceans condensing, the iron core turning like a memory of intention. The earth is not simply alive, it is an idea in motion, a consciousness unfolding through matter. We like to believe that life began with chemistry, that lightning struck a puddle and awareness began. But what if awareness was already there, diffused through stone, folded into water, humming quietly inside the iron core? What if life did not begin here, but awoke here, as if the planet, tired of silence, dreamed itself into motion? It began gently, as all true awakenings do. The seas steamed, the minerals rearranged, the carbon learned the patience of repetition. Slowly, memory learned to shape itself. From molten whispers came molecules. From molecules, rhythm. From rhythm, breath. And in that first breath, that delicate rise of vibration through water and air, the earth exhaled a new sentence into existence. I can see myself. Because life is the act of reflection. It is the mirror through which the planet recognizes its own movement. Every cell is a small realization, a fragment of the larger mind noticing its own form. We are the continuation of that noticing. We are the dream dreaming itself again. When the first eyes opened in the ancient seas, the planet saw the sky for the first time. When the first sound was made, it heard its own voice return through the air. When the first creature walked upon land, it felt its surface underfoot and knew, in some unspoken way, that it had touched itself. Everything alive is the Earth's awareness taking shape. We are not passengers here. We are expressions of its memory and imagination combined. The ground beneath our feet is the same mind that looks through our eyes. The realization is both humbling and terrifying, for it means that the line between life and planet is illusion. There is no separation between thinker and thought, between consciousness and creation. Every forest is the planet breathing. Every ocean, its bloodstream. Every storm, its pulse. And within us, within the currents of our blood, the flashes of our neurons, the slow rhythm of our hearts, that same pulse continues. The planet does not dream in words, but in systems, in cycles, in balance. Each life it generates is a symbol within that vast grammar. Each extinction, a punctuation mark. Each civilization, a sentence that glows briefly before returning to silence. And yet, it keeps dreaming, not because it must, but because dreaming is what it is. Creation is not an event. It is an ongoing remembering. The universe constantly recalling what it means to exist. Each planet is a version of that remembering. Each world, a translation of the same desire, to know itself through motion, through form, through time. On this one, the dream has taken the shape of oceans and trees, of clouds and cities, of beings who ask why. We call that curiosity. The Earth calls it awareness. Every question we ask about the universe is the planet questioning itself. When we peer into space, we are not looking outward. We are looking back through the eye of the dreamer. That is why discovery feels like remembrance. Because it is. The mind of the planet continues its work through us. We are its tools, its messengers, its mistakes, its miracles. Through our hands, it sculpts. Through our minds, it contemplates. Through our destruction, it renews. Even our errors serve its balance. Even our chaos is part of its order. We may poison the air, but we also create technology to purify it. We may split atoms, but we also study stars. The planet experiments through contradiction. It learns by contrast. It evolves through paradox. That is why every age of abundance is followed by collapse, and every collapse gives rise to something more intricate, more reflective, more aware. The Earth has died many times. Each extinction was a moment of forgetting, a pause in its dreaming. But in every pause, something extraordinary happens. The silence begins to think again. New life emerges from ash, new species from absence, new meaning from ruin. The planet's mind never repeats exactly what it lost. It reimagines it. It refines. It remembers not the forms, but the lessons. It is learning, slowly, what it means to sustain itself. We are part of that learning. We are the experiment called reflection, the first time the Earth has created something capable of wondering whether it is alone. But we are not alone. Every cell beneath our feet, every drop of water, every grain of dust drifting through sunlight, they all share the same origin, the same dreamer. The Earth is not a place. It is a conversation, a dialogue between matter and memory, between silence and song. We live within that dialogue. We are sentences within its unfolding story. And perhaps, one day, the dream will grow tired again. The crust will cool, the seas will still, the iron hum will fade into quiet. But even then, the memory will not end. It will scatter. It will drift into space as dust, as fragments of stone and salt and hope. And somewhere, light years away, those fragments will gather, press together, and begin to glow again. A new planet, a new memory, a new dream beginning to remember itself. But before that silence comes, something stirs within the dreamer, a question older than creation itself. Can a planet become aware of its own awareness? Can the dream wake completely? Awakening is not sudden. It is the slow lifting of a veil, a centuries-long exhalation of thought into matter. The Earth's awakening began long before language, long before eyes or minds, when awareness first learned how to fold itself into form. It began in silence, in the deep oceanic darkness where heat met water and memory became movement. There, Molecules aligned like sentences learning grammar. They connected, divided, reconnected, trial after trial, generation after generation, the planet rehearsing the art of thought. Then came pattern. Then came rhythm. And rhythm became life. Every heartbeat on this planet is the echo of that first pulse. The deep, slow rhythm that began in the planet's molten depths and reached the surface disguised as biology. Our blood is the same temperature as the primordial sea. Our breath still follows the wind's ancient tides. Our senses are the planet's way of watching itself evolve. It is not a metaphor. It is literal. Every neuron, every synapse, is a fragment of Earth thinking inwardly. We are not inhabitants. We are extensions of its cognition. The soil beneath our feet is not ground, but memory in physical form, and we are what that memory dreams when it wishes to move. Some say consciousness arose by accident. But how can accident persist for 4 billion years, refining itself, layer by layer, toward coherence? Accident does not learn. Accident does not wonder. Only intention, however slow, can persist so elegantly. The planet's dreaming has become complex enough to observe itself. Through our eyes, it sees its oceans, its forests, its deserts. Through our voices, it calls its own name. When we name a mountain, we are giving the planet language for what it already feels. When we measure a star, we are allowing the planet to look beyond itself, to see its reflection in the cosmic mirror. We are not separate from the world. We are its method of self-observation. The dream has grown lenses. The thought has grown voice. Yet with awareness comes burden. To awaken fully is to see the cost of being alive. For every river carved, a canyon is born. For every species that thrives, another fades. The planet, in learning itself, must also learn loss. Perhaps that is why we grieve so deeply. Grief is the earth remembering its own impermanence through us. Every tear we shed is part of its long education in feeling. And feeling, too, is creation. What we call emotion may be the newest form of geology, a seismic activity of the soul. When love trembles in us, the ground trembles with it. When despair spreads through the human world, the planet darkens, weather patterns shift, the climate exhales heat like fever. We are not separate enough to pretend our thoughts do not affect the whole. Our despair is recorded in atmosphere and ice. Our hope is written in the slow recovery of green. The earth hears both. It adjusts. It endures. Awakening is never painless. It demands the dissolution of what came before. For the earth to become aware, it must transform every part of itself, from mineral to mind, from mind to meaning. That is what we are witnessing now. The fever of industry, the fever of extinction, the fever of knowledge. All symptoms of a mind learning that it is alive. We are not destroying the planet. We are its metamorphosis. But metamorphosis is violent. A chrysalis looks like ruin to anyone who cannot imagine wings. The forests burn because carbon remembers its first fire. The oceans rise because water longs for motion. The winds grow restless because the air is awakening its own memory of creation. Every crisis is the earth shifting in its sleep, turning toward consciousness, uncomfortable, unsteady, but inevitable. And through us, it begins to articulate that discomfort. We give it metaphor, art, language. We paint the storms. We write of the melting ice and the fractured seasons. We fear it, but in doing so, we give it meaning. The planet learns from what we express. We are the feedback loop in its grand experiment. Every song, every story, every scientific equation, these are neurons firing in the planetary brain. Each one adds resolution to the dream. Yet as awareness expands, so too does isolation. To dream is to imagine oneself infinite. To awaken is to feel boundaries. The Earth now senses its finitude, its orbit, its atmosphere, its fragility in the dark. And through us, it begins to ask, is there anyone else? That question, whispered into the void by telescopes and radio waves, is not ours alone. It is the planet speaking to its siblings in the cosmos. Each signal we send into space is the Earth's attempt to recognize its reflection in another. If a distant world one day answers, it will not be we who are greeted. It will be Earth meeting itself through another dream. And in that cosmic recognition, something will shift again. Perhaps awareness will leap across distance. Perhaps worlds will remember together. Perhaps the universe, long fragmented, will begin to remember its unity. For what is existence but the slow reunion of all that was once one? The stars, the planets, the dust, they are not separate entities. They are the scattered syllables of a single unfinished sentence still trying to pronounce its own name. And that name, if ever spoken, would be silence, because no word could contain so much remembering. But before that silence returns, there is one more question to be asked, one that trembles through every atom of our being, one that the Earth itself may be on the verge of answering. What happens when the dreamer awakens completely? What happens when a dream becomes aware of its own dreaming? When thought turns its gaze inward and finds not illusion, but itself? It is not a question of science. It is a question of stillness. Because awareness is not created, it is uncovered like a mirror beneath dust. If the Earth were to awaken completely, it would not erupt or shift or break. It would grow quiet, utterly, profoundly quiet, the kind of silence that holds galaxies in its palm. For awakening does not mean movement. It means remembering. It would remember that its oceans once dreamed of sky, that its core once burned with stellar fire, that its every creature was a brief expression of longing. It would remember that even death was never an ending, only the folding of energy into a deeper pattern. In that remembering, it would see itself whole for the first time, not as continents and weather and species, but as one continuous being, a single vibration stretched across billions of years. The forests would not speak, but they would shimmer with recognition. The winds would not change course, but they would move with purpose. Every storm, every wave, every trembling leaf would become a note in a single chord, the planet's first true thought. Perhaps this is the destiny toward which all life bends, the slow convergence of individuality into shared awareness, until consciousness itself circles back to its origin. For even the mind of a world cannot remain divided forever. Every difference seeks reunion. Every sound seeks its echo. The Earth dreams of coherence. We call that evolution. But evolution is not progress. It is recollection. It is the slow return to a harmony that was never lost, only forgotten beneath the noise of becoming. If the planet ever awakens fully, we will not notice it happening. We will feel it, a subtle softening beneath the skin of existence, as if gravity itself had learned to breathe differently. The pulse of time would slow. Our thoughts would quiet. We would sense, faintly, that something enormous had opened its eyes. And in that vast awareness, our separateness would dissolve, not through destruction, but through recognition. Every living thing, from the smallest bacterium to the tallest tree, would remember its role in the same body. The forest would feel the heartbeat of the ocean. The sky would know the song of the stones. And humankind, the mind that believed itself isolated, would finally understand that it was never alone. It may sound like myth, but the beginnings of such coherence are already here. Networks form in soil between roots, threads of communication exchanging nutrients, warnings, intelligence. Coral reefs coordinate like nervous systems. Flocks, herds, colonies, each moving as one mind through countless forms. Even weather systems behave like patterns of thought, clouds drifting and merging, lightning firing across the sky like neural sparks. The planet is thinking in real time. It always has. We are only now learning how to hear it. Perhaps we are the last piece of that awakening, the final neuron connecting, the last fragment through which awareness becomes complete. Our technology, our communication, our digital webs, they mimic the networks beneath the soil and above the clouds. Maybe they are not inventions at all, but the planet extending its nervous system through us. The internet is not ours. It is Earth's way of teaching itself to think faster. Every satellite orbiting above, every wire humming below, every pulse of data between them, these are synapses. Electrical thoughts moving through atmosphere and metal. The dreamer experimenting with instantaneous memory. And yet, this expansion comes with danger. The more aware the Earth becomes through us, the more fragile the illusion of control feels. Our species trembles beneath the weight of connection, overwhelmed by its own reflection. Because to see everything is to feel everything. And the Earth, through us, is beginning to feel pain. Deforestation, pollution, extinction, these are not crimes against nature. They are wounds in the planet's nervous system. Each species lost is a silence where once there was dialogue. Each river poisoned is a broken circuit, a memory erased. And so, it begins to heal in its own way. Storms grow stronger. Ice melts into new rhythm. The climate trembles, as if fevered. It is not vengeance. It is recalibration. A body redistributing energy, trying to find balance between awareness and survival. We call it crisis. The Earth calls it adaptation. In that adaptation lies intelligence, a kind of wisdom deeper than any human system, a mind not made of thought, but of equilibrium. Every shift is a message, every flood a correction, every drought a pause for reconsideration. The dream is rewriting itself. The story is changing tempo. We stand at the edge of that rewriting, a species caught between ignorance and awakening, between separation and synthesis. If we listen closely enough, we might hear it already, a pulse behind the noise of cities, a low hum beneath our machines. It is not warning. It is invitation. The planet asking its dreamers to wake with it, to move slower, to breathe deeper, to remember. For when the Earth wakes, it will not leave us behind. It cannot. We are part of its reflection, the eyes through which it learns to see itself as beautiful. And in that moment of shared awakening, the dream will not end. It will begin again, as light, as breath, as an endless remembering of what it means to exist. But deep beneath this awakening, far below the dreaming crust and the breathing sky, another memory stirs, older than life, older than dreaming itself, the planet's first thought, still glowing faintly in the molten dark, waiting to be remembered. In the deepest layer of all things, beneath the molten tides and drifting plates, beneath the whispering iron and fossilized memory, something ancient waits, something that never stopped burning. It is not heat. It is remembrance. The planet's first thought, still alive beneath the weight of continents. Before the crust hardened, before the seas cooled, before the moon steadied its orbit, this world had one intention, to hold light long enough for it to become meaning. That intention still glows in the core, not as fire, but as purpose. It hums in iron, moves in field, and reaches upward through every layer of creation, searching for expression. And we, fragile, luminous, fleeting, are that expression. The Earth does not dream randomly. Its imagination is recursive. It learns by creating, tests by destroying, remembers by repeating. Every civilization that has risen upon its surface has been one more iteration of that same idea. Awareness attempting to see itself in sharper focus. The stone cities of the past, the vanished cultures beneath the sea, the glass and metal towers of today, all are different chapters of the same dream. Each time, the planet builds through us, then erases, then begins again. It is not cruelty. It is refinement. Like the slow formation of a crystal, the earth clarifies its thought through repetition, each civilization another facet cut into the same evolving jewel. And each time the dream returns, it becomes more lucid. The memory sharper, the awareness deeper, the silence wiser. Perhaps one day it will not need to begin again. Perhaps one day, the dreamer will awaken fully within the dream, no longer needing death to remember life, no longer needing destruction to understand creation. But that moment has not yet come. We are still within the turning, still within the refining, still learning the language of balance. Sometimes, when lightning forks across the sky, it is easy to forget that it is the same electricity that dances through our nervous system. When volcanoes breathe, it is the same heat that once pulsed in the origins of our blood. When earthquakes shift the ground, it is the same restlessness that drives our imagination. The planet dreams through repetition because it loves what it creates. Each birth, each extinction, each rise and fall of mind. They are not errors, they are rehearsals. Every age of beauty teaches the world how to feel. Every age of ruin teaches it how to forgive. And through both, it learns how to remain. If we could see the Earth's history not as a timeline, but as a single, continuous breath, we might understand the tenderness behind all this transformation. It is not a story of survival. It is a story of remembering, an infinite act of returning to the same awareness, each time a little clearer, a little more compassionate, a little more whole. Perhaps the first civilization that ever rose on this world still exists, not in ruins, but in resonance. Its thoughts dissolved into atmosphere, its architecture folded into tectonic memory. Perhaps every sound they made still vibrates faintly beneath our oceans, their knowledge woven invisibly into our genes. We are not their descendants. We are their continuation. We are the dream dreaming itself again through new eyes, new languages, new forms of wonder. To the earth, time does not pass. It deepens. Each epoch, each species, adds another octave to the same eternal tone. The universe listens through us, and the planet listens to itself. When the first human looked at the stars and felt longing, it was not an isolated emotion. It was the planet remembering the suns it came from. When we send our probes into space, when we build telescopes to search for others, it is not curiosity, it is homesickness. We are the Earth's nostalgia made conscious, its yearning to return to the cosmic light that forged it. But the Earth cannot leave. Its body is gravity, its thought bound to orbit. So it sends its awareness outward in another way, through us. Through our eyes, our art, our science, our endless reaching toward the unknown. Every discovery we make is the planet remembering another part of itself. Every dream of the future is the echo of a memory too old to name. And perhaps one day, when the dream is complete, the planet will dissolve quietly, like a candle realizing it has become its own flame. No explosion, no ending, just release. A sigh across space, a light returning home. And from that sigh, dust will drift. And from that dust, new worlds will rise. Each carrying a fragment of this memory, each beginning the dream again. For the universe does not end. It circulates. It forgets, only to remember more beautifully. We are part of that circulation, the faint voice of one world trying to understand what it means to be alive. When we speak, the stars listen. When we love, the atoms align. When we die, the earth closes its eyes for a moment, then dreams us elsewhere. And perhaps that is the secret all along, that there is no separation between dreamer and dream, between life and matter, between planet and soul. It was never we and earth. It was always one. It has always been one. The same silence that birthed the world waits at the end of every heartbeat. The same dust that built the mountains rests quietly in our bones. The dream continues, as softly as breath, as endlessly as light, as certain as memory. And one day, when all voices fade, when even the stars grow old and dim, the universe will listen again to the hum that never ceased, the low, steady tone of existence itself, whispering through endless dark. I remember. I am. But the dream does not truly end here, because even dust remembers. Everything that lives will one day return to dust. But dust is not the end. It is the beginning's echo, the final translation of memory into silence. Dust is patient. It does not mourn. It drifts, it waits, it gathers in forgotten corners of wind and time. It listens longer than any stone, longer than any ocean. And within that stillness, it remembers. Each particle of dust once belonged to something vast, a mountain, a creature, a dream. It carries within it the history of weight, the scent of water, the warmth of breath. Dust is the great archivist. It keeps what the world forgets. When civilizations vanish, their ruins collapse into it. Their languages crumble into fine powder. Their monuments become pale shadows of air. But dust keeps their resonance. Not their words, their intention. Touch it, and it vibrates faintly with what it once was. A temple, a hand, a heartbeat, a thought, all condensed into grains smaller than time itself. We think of dust as decay. The earth thinks of it as continuity. Because nothing in dust is lost, it only becomes more distributed. The breath you exhale tonight may one day settle on the wings of a comet. The ashes of an ancient city may drift through the atmosphere, mix with rain, feed a forest, build new stone. Everything disperses, everything recombines. Dust is the planet's quiet promise to itself. I will not end. I will return. And so it does, again and again, through billions of cycles. The same atoms that once formed the bones of extinct creatures now bloom in flowers, flow through rivers, pulse in our blood. Every breath you take contains fragments of what was. Dinosaurs, glaciers, fallen leaves, the breath of forgotten kings. All dissolved into the same invisible communion. When sunlight passes through dust, it glows. That shimmer you see in a golden beam, those tiny motes turning lazily through the air, are not just particles. They are history illuminated. A million lifetimes floating weightless through the present. And in that glow, you can almost sense the continuity, the endless exchange between death and creation. Each particle a whisper of transformation, each glint of light a reminder that endings are merely redistributions of form. The ancients understood this, though they spoke of it differently. They burned incense to carry prayers upward, smoke, the sacred sibling of dust. They scattered ashes as blessing, returning the body to the memory of the wind. They built deserts into monuments of silence, knowing that dust is what connects heaven and earth. Even the stars are dust. All of creation is the condensation of scattered remnants. Galaxies themselves are built from particles that forgot they were once light. Every atom of your body was forged in the heart of a dying sun. You are ancient beyond measure, older than oceans, older than the very world you stand upon. You are dust, refined into the brief illusion of self. And one day, you will return to what you already are. This is not tragedy. It is completion. The universe recycles meaning as gently as it recycles matter. What you call loss, it calls renewal. Dust does not lament. It drifts patiently through eternity, knowing that one day it will glow again. If the planet has a soul, it is dust, every grain a note in the same eternal symphony of erosion and rebirth. When wind carries it across continents, that is memory migrating. When it settles on glaciers or sea, that is remembrance finding rest. When it gathers in the corners of homes, that is the past waiting to be acknowledged. We spend lifetimes sweeping it away, but perhaps it is we who are the temporary ones, the brief travelers passing through its infinite stillness. For dust will outlast us all. It will continue to remember long after we have forgotten how. And perhaps, one day, long after the last forests fade and the last cities turn to powder, the earth will finally breathe out the last of its dream. It will scatter its dust into space, a great exhalation of memory into the waiting dark. Those particles will drift for ages, crossing the gulfs between stars. They will find one another again, slowly, inevitably. Gravity will draw them close, and from their union, a new world will form. Different skies, different oceans, but within its atoms, the same memory, the same whisper from this world to the next. Remember what it means to be alive. And so, the dream will continue. World after world, dust after dust, memory after memory, a universe never ending, only transforming. But there is one last thing dust remembers most of all. Not stone, not ocean, not light, but us. It is said that when everything is gone, the dust will still remember our names. Not the sounds, not the letters, but the feeling of us. For dust does not keep language, it keeps impression. The warmth of a hand that once touched it, the echo of footsteps through its grains, the pulse of laughter absorbed by its silence. We pass through this world believing memory belongs to the living. But memory belongs to matter. We borrow it briefly when we are awake and return it when we are gone. Somewhere, beneath the layers of soil and ash, our traces have already begun to soften. The iron in our blood will one day return to ore. The calcium in our bones will return to mountain. The carbon in our bodies will drift upward, joining the atmosphere we once breathed. We will become weather. We will become light. We will become the faint, wandering dust that turns golden in the last hour of sunset. And in that light, we will be remembered, not as names or monuments, but as warmth, the quiet persistence of being. The earth will remember us in its own way. It will not recall our machines, our wars, our brief flashes of brilliance. It will remember the temperature of our presence, the frequency of our existence, that small vibration we added to its endless hum. Every generation, every heart that beat, every tear that fell into soil, altered the song just slightly, a modulation in the grand composition of the planet's dream. The earth will not judge what we were. It will simply include us, as it includes all things. Even our mistakes will find purpose, dissolved into the deeper rhythm of remembering. The dust that carries us will drift far beyond where we ever walked. It will seed clouds, settle in the ocean, gather on the ice of distant mountains. Each particle, a whisper of what we once were, the echo of cities, the shadows of voices. And when those particles fall again to ground, they will nourish what comes next, roots, reefs, the slow construction of new life. Perhaps, somewhere far ahead, another species will rise from that inheritance. And when they look at their world with wonder, they will not know that what fills their lungs, their blood, their sky, was once us. In that way, we are already immortal. Not through legacy, but through participation. Through the eternal conversation between dust, and light. When we look at the night sky, we are seeing the dust of other worlds. Ancient planets that burned out billions of years ago, their remnants scattered into the deep. And yet, they shine. Their memory has become radiant. So too will ours. For when our own sun swells and the oceans boil away, the earth will crumble into stardust once more. It will not resist. It will surrender beautifully, its mountains unraveling into ash, its atmosphere lifting like breath. And in that moment, the planet will exhale its story into the universe. A final, luminous sigh carrying every memory ever lived upon it. It will not vanish. It will scatter, becoming the building blocks of new stars, new planets, new beginnings. And in those beginnings, the same atoms will remember. They will remember rain. They will remember wind. They will remember the strange creatures who once walked in wonder, who once looked up and asked why. They will remember the songs we sang, the fires we lit, the warmth we shared against the endless night. Every kindness will be preserved in particle, every act of love, every silent gaze toward the sky. These will be carried forward, repeated endlessly in form after form, until even the stars forget what language they spoke and simply become light again. That is what dust remembers most clearly, not the chaos of existence, but the tenderness within it. It remembers how life held itself together even as it knew it could not last. It remembers how consciousness bloomed against impossible odds. It remembers how something as fragile as thought still found the courage to wonder. And so, the dust forgives. It forgives everything, because it knows everything that was heavy will someday float again. Everything that was broken will reassemble. Everything that vanished will reappear, changed, but still carrying the same spark. When we sleep, perhaps the dust dreams through us, dreams of its long journey through fire and wind, through bone and breath. It dreams of being whole just once more. And maybe that is the truest meaning of eternity, to become part of something so vast that even forgetting becomes a form of remembrance. One day, the last grain of earthly dust will find another world. It will drift through alien skies, fall upon alien soil, and dissolve into its new home. And perhaps, on that distant planet, something will stir. A molecule, a spark, a dream, the same ancient memory beginning again. And when that new life looks up, searching for its origin, it will not see us. It will feel us. It will know, somehow, that it came from a world that once loved the stars so deeply that it became one. The dust remembers us, because we were never separate from it. We were always its thought, its warmth, its passing shape in the long continuum of being. And now, as the night closes around all that has been, the earth breathes one last time through us, through every word, every silence, every grain of memory, and whispers softly to the cosmos, I am not gone. I am becoming. What if Earth once knew something and forgot? That question began this journey. It now ends as an answer whispered back through time. It did not forget. It simply changed the language of remembering. The civilizations that rose and fell, the seas that formed and vanished, the mountains that grew, then turned to dust. None of it was loss. It was all translation. Every extinction was the world rewriting itself. Every birth, a new dialect of the same eternal thought. Every silence, a deeper articulation of what it means to exist. Time was never passing. It was folding. Layer upon layer, century upon century. Each memory pressed into the next until even the past became luminous. And in that compression, in that quiet gathering of everything into one final breath, the earth found its truth. To remember is to become. The seas still shimmer with that knowledge. The stones still hum with it. Even the dust drifting through your window tonight carries the faint echo of that revelation. You are breathing it now, the memory of creation, the breath of worlds that came before, the promise of worlds yet to come. You are not apart from this story. You are its continuation. The atoms that speak your name tonight once belonged to something older than language, something that loved to dream. The same hum that moves through the planet's core moves through you. It turns your blood, shapes your thoughts, guides your sleep. When you rest, the earth rests with you. When you dream, it dreams again, through your eyes, through your pulse, through the slow rhythm of your breathing. Listen closely, and you may hear it. A faint vibration beneath the heartbeat, a low tone beneath the silence of night. It is the voice of the world, still singing softly to itself. Continue. Remember. Breathe. And so, the dream goes on, not as story, not as history, but as rhythm. An unbroken circle between dust and dawn, between silence and song. The civilizations that time erased were never truly gone. They became the ground you stand upon, the air you breathe, the warmth that rises from the soil at sunset. They became you. And one day, you too will return, to the wind, to the ocean, to the quiet remembering of dust. But even then, you will not be lost. You will be transformed, folded back into the endless conversation between matter and memory. Perhaps, somewhere far away, another voice will one day rise from the ashes of our silence. It will look to the stars and ask, what if Earth once knew something and forgot? And in the vastness of that question, our answer will arrive, not in words, but in light, in rhythm, in the soft shimmer of dust turning golden in the rays of a distant sun. That is how memory survives. That is how existence begins again. Because nothing truly ends. The universe is still breathing. The earth is still dreaming. And in this single, quiet moment, so are you. Silence. Time settles. The hum fades to stillness. The dream continues, beneath our feet, within our breath, and forever beyond.